All right. Today we are going to be ranking all the mainline Pokemon games. To be more specific, we'll be doing the generational games, the third versions, and the remakes. So we will not be doing anything like Arceus, Mystery Dungeon, and certainly no Detective Pikachu. I am being joined today by several other people who are. Some of them are old fans. Some of them are have jumped in relatively new to the generations. I myself was an old fan through Gen 1, bailed at about halfway through Gen 2, and then I recently returned last year to binge everything. So despite being a returning fan, am fully up to date. I'm firstly being joined by someone else who I've had on several videos, Ezreal, who will most likely be referred to Ian from now on.
Hello.
And I've also got Arcanite Sky, aka Kit,
Hello.
who I have been in several of her YouTube videos. In addition,
Several.
fair enough. And in addition, I'm also being joined by someone who did the Sonic ranking video with me, which is Breaky. And lastly, I've got Shads, an old buddy of mine who has been probably into Pokemon longer than any of us.
Yeah, probably. Probably.
And so I'm going to start by saying we will not be ranking these based on the generational designs of the Pokemon. So just to get it out of the way, we'll start with which generations are favorite, least favorite, and maybe a couple favorite Pokemon. For me, my favorite, just based on the designs, would be Gen 1. My least favorite would probably be 7, as I wasn't a huge fan of the Alolan variants. And my favorite Pokemon would probably be Charizard, followed closely by Mewtwo. Breaky, you want to say what yours are?
My favorite Pokemon is Pikachu and any cat Pokemon.
You have a favorite generation?
Gen 6, because that's the one I started with.
Fair enough.
I know it's like unfinished and stuff, but I enjoyed my time playing in it.
Fair
Gen
enough.
9's probably like my second favorite. Yeah. That's all really.
Alright, what about you, Ian?
I'm a big Bulbasaur stan. Behind Bulbasaur and anything. Honestly, did not start out as such, but a friend had to show me the way with their Charizard Y Mega Venusaur comp that would just spam solar beams at me constantly. That's a really fun comp. That
Yeah,
for whatever reason Venusaur was.
I will give you that one. That the Venusaur does have the better Mega form.
They're both very fun. But my favorite gen is 7, given that it came when I was really wanting something to shake things up a bit. And while it hasn't aged super gracefully in that regard, it was still really nice to have something that wasn't quite just, your traditional 8 gym badges.
We are talking about, right now we're talking specifically on the designs of the Pokemon, not the games.
Oh.
Sorry if I wasn't clear about that.
Sorry, my bad.
No, we'll get to that. So which is your favorite design based on designs, and least favorite if you want?
Honestly, I don't think any of them particularly stick out to me as favorite or least favorite on designs personally. I think all generations kind of have really super cool designs, and then others kind of duds. I mean, even, Gen 1 has, of course, the original 3 starters, which have really cool designs, but it also has, like, Muck. I like Muck, but that's just a pile of sludge. Like,
I mean, I agree with you on a lot of those inanimate object ones, but, like, one of the things I've always, like, been a bit more excusing for Generation 1 about is the fact that a lot of the inanimate objects can be dismissed as robots, and then Smuck and Grimer like ye old slime monsters that are in every RPG there is.
Yeah.
To me, the only
yeah.
abomination for Gen 1 is that Mr. Mime. Just, no, get rid of it, please.
Not Phantom's dad.
Anyways, what about you, Kit?
So, double checking. We're talking about least and most favorite Pokemon designs based on generation, right?
Yeah, just what's your favorite generation or least favorite if you want. And you don't have to say least favorite if you don't want to.
I mean, I'm gonna say Generation 5 because that's literally the first generation I played.
Fair enough.
I know there's, of course, some really weird designs in Gen 5, but I like most of them. And then in terms of, like, least favorite, it's probably gonna be Gen 7. Oh yeah, favorite Pokemon. Arkin, which is what my name's from, and Vaporeon. Don't make it weird. Don't make it weird. Don't make it weird.
This is not a Rule 34 tier list. We're fine.
I wouldn't be able to be here if it was a Rule 34 tier list.
No.
Nah. So what's yours then, Shads?
Favorite generation is 3. Favorite Pokemon are Steel, Element, Rayquaza. I don't really have the least favorite gen for Pokemon designs. I mean, there's always ugly ones in every group.
Fair enough.
Bruxish, though. Bruxish is ugly.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I prefer not to think about it.
They took an animal that's ugly in real life and they somehow made it uglier. I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, you're telling me.
I don't know. I don't know.
So, anyways, now that we've got that out of the way, we're going to talk about the game specifically. And, excuse me, I will be starting us off with Gen 1. This was the first introduction of Pokemon for the US, and one of the, obviously, and one of the first, actually, let me rephrase that, because that sounded really dumb. This was one of the first creature taming games for the US, even though there were games that were a bit older, like Megami Tensei. I don't know if Monster Rancher was earlier or not, but regardless,
No.
it took full use of the Game Boy, which was impressive for its time. But as much as Generation 1 may be my favorite in its designs of the Pokemon, as far as the games, yeah. I will excuse it a bit for being the first one. And again, as I said before, it's impressive the way that it took full use of the Game Boy to make an RPG that went absolutely insane. And I don't think the developers expected that. But we gotta look at the fact that Gen 1 was pretty unbalanced, especially in its original iteration on the Game Boy. It did not have double typings yet, did not have double battles yet. Dragon was barely a thing. Yeah, it also did not help that Gen 1's story was pretty minimal, and there wasn't a whole lot to do between Gym, Elite Four rival. Or Elite Four champion. But I do have to give it credit for, again, starting that craze, so for me personally, I would probably put Gen 1 into its original iteration into C. Now, Yellow, on the other hand, I have mixed feelings for. On one hand, I like the fact that they tried to make some sort of ultimate version. The problem is that it really wasn't. I believe there were still Pokemon that you couldn't get without trading. Then that's not including trade evolutions. And there were also changes that were not popular. One of which being having the Pikachu forced on you. And having its anime cry play through the speakers of the Game Boy was a nightmare. Whether or not you like the Pikachu's anime cry, that Game Boy sound was pretty disturbing. Now, I do like the fact that they did add Team Rocket. By that, I mean Jesse and James into it. But apart from that, it was just kind of more like, let's get a quick cash-in for the anime. For that, I would put it in either D or F. Fire Red and Leaf Green were if you want a more faithful remake, this is the way to play Gen 1. As they fixed a lot of the balancing issues, the visuals and audio are obviously much better. They added the double typing and double battles, as well as a new post-game map to explore. But beyond that, it's still got a lot of Generation 1's problems, and the fact that the region is very basic, story is basic, and there's just not a lot to do apart from just battle from one gym to the other. For that, I would probably give it a low B. Now, Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu were a bit more divisive. I appreciate the fact that they really made the Kanto region come to life with its new visuals. And I'm actually a fan of the new catching mechanics, as it's nice to be able to catch without having to battle everything. Though, I know that's pretty divisive. And there are also a fair number of other gameplay tweaks. I think you could do this in Yellow as well, but I do like the fact that you can have all 3 of the starters on your team at once. And it wasn't as big of a pain in the butt to get them. But beyond that, it was faithful but different enough that it felt closer like a new game to where I didn't feel like I was replaying the same game a third time. So for that, I would give it a solid B. So Breaky, where would you put these games?
I've not played the original. Well, I've not finished the original Gen 1. On
Yeah,
the
if you haven't
Virtual
played
Console.
if you haven't played something, just say you haven't played it.
I mean, I did do all glitches with what I could do on the Virtual Console, but that's about it. So I don't have an opinion on those really.
Fair enough. Where would you put Let's Go?
I struggled in that game, so probably C or D, honestly.
Fair enough.
I still wish the Meowth talked in the Let's Go games, like the anime. Since Jesse and James were there.
Yeah, that was a bit off-putting, but I do feel that they made some of those changes to, like, distance it a little bit from the anime, like how they gave you a different rival. But maybe that's just me. Anyways, how about you, Ian?
Yellow was my first Pokemon game, and honestly, one of my first games in general, because I don't know exactly why we owned specifically Pokemon Yellow, but it's like specifically owned Pokemon. My parents must have picked it up at some point, but I could not get past the first gym because I did not understand the concept of catching other Pokemon at age like 3 because I was stupid. So I would just go in, and obviously Pikachu ain't doing shit in that first gym, unfortunately. So my opinion of Yellow in that regard is like C. It's like But the rest of Gen 1 I think is also, for me, fairly solid A. I think it sets out some really good foundations and some of the best, or at least like some of the most memorable locations for me are also kind of in Gen 1. There's not a lot of forgetting Lavender Town, from my perspective. Whereas some of the other gens have a lot more forgettable environments. So I feel like it just sets out a really good foundation that, of course, bases 9 generation, soon 10 generation series off of. So yeah, I think Yellow and C, and for me, the rest of them around A, because I think they all do a really good job of showing off that foundation. All proves a solid way of playing the game to see Pokemon's roots.
Fair enough.
Oh, I guess it's my turn, huh?
Yep.
So, I have not played Gen 1 at all.
Yeah.
Not even the Let's Go games. So
You don't have to rank it. Just like give us some impressions you have of it then.
I have always heard don't play the original first versions of Gen 1. Play Fire Red and Leaf Green if you're going to do it.
Fully agree with that, though for me I would say Let's Go.
I've also heard that, but yeah, never played them.
Fair enough. How about you, Shads?
So red and blue have a lot of good foundations. They're also held together by like the programmer's equivalent of duct tape and a lot of prayers.
Yeah.
Hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
Hopes
No, there's no hopes and dreams when it comes to programming.
Wing and a prayer.
It's more like
yeah.
duct tape and bubble gum.
Yep. And lots of empty coffee cans. So that and it being super unbalanced, I would put it as like a high C or a low B. Just because it's so unbalanced, you can exploit the AI super easily. Alakazam is your god, not Mew. I'm sorry. Mew's not even in the game.
Unless you do a glitch.
Unless you do a glitch. Lots of glitches. Story is extremely minimal, and I'll be honest, I am a sucker for a good story. Yellow, I would put in kind of a similar situation. It's different enough from red and blue that I think ranking it separately is needed, but I wouldn't say it substantially changes anything. It's less glitchy. Some of the anime tie-in changes weren't my cup of tea. Fire Red and Leaf Green, they changed most of the main issues of Gen 1, so I would put those in B, maybe low A. Let's Go, I'm working my way through that one now. I like the art style. And I really appreciate the fact that you don't have to catch all your Pokemon in battle. That was something I loved in Arceus. I know that we're not talking about Arceus in this video, but I really like that in Let's Go too. Because it's just so tedious to fill out the Pokedex otherwise.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I'd probably put that probably the kind of same as Fire Red, high B, low A.
All right. So I will. We've been a bit all over there in the originals, so I'm going to put the originals into a high C, yellow into D, Fire Red and Leaf Green will put into B, which may or may not stay low or mid. And for Let's Go Eevee, I'm going to put it at the top of B for now, which I may change to a low A later. No, I just had to finagle it a bit. But yeah, we're going to start off with that. Alright, now for Gen 2. This is the gen that actually made me drop Pokemon for a while, though I will admit the anime also had a big part of why I dropped it, but we're not going there. They did make some balancing improvements, and I believe this is when they introduced double typing. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because, again, it's been a real long time since I played the originals. I do not remember the exact changes. They definitely gave the region a bit more spice to it than Gen 1 did. But the problem I had is this one felt even... After you get through the introduction, that one felt even more like Gym Elite Four Champion than Gen 1 did, which is saying something. And even the bits with Team Rocket are just kind of neutered and pointless, and there's less encounters with them than there were in Gen 1. At least that's how it felt to me. I appreciate the technical changes and the fact that it was more stable and more balanced. But I don't know. To me, it was just more of the same. It didn't really advance it in the ways I was kind of looking forward to, and that's part of the way I dropped it. And just because there's no reason to play the originals compared to Crystal or the remakes, I would put them into probably either C or D. Crystal did not really change much. It was more closer to an Ultimate version than Yellow was, since it didn't introduce any radical changes. But as far as I know, the only major addition was the Suicune side story, but apart from that, it was just balancing changes and the ability to catch more Pokemon in it than any of the two standalones. So-
Crystal was the first game that you could play as a girl.
Oh, was it? I thought you could do that in
Yep.
the originals. Oh, I
Nope,
stand
you couldn't.
corrected then. Oh, that's fair enough. That's actually a good change. But be that
Gender equality.
be that as it may, I'd still probably put it in the same spot as the originals. Maybe in a C if I'd put those in a D. Now the remakes are an interesting situation. They still have a lot of the same problems with Gen 2 as the originals did that I had with those games. However, the quality of the remakes themselves is top tier. They look better, they sound better, they've been further balance tweaked to be more enjoyable. They've got, I believe they have all the content of Crystal in them, as well as some new stuff. And it was like one of the first and few games where your Pokemon, or at least your lead Pokemon, would follow you around, which was kind of, it's not an important change, but it was a nice one. So even though I would not rate Gen 2 that high, the quality of the remakes themselves make them worthy of at least the B tier.
You can't forget the Pokewalker.
Fair enough.
It's the
Pokewalker puts it. Yeah.
And Breaky, I know you have not played Gen 2 at all, correct?
No, I have not. I am watching someone do a let's play of it, and as well as a Nuzlocke, so that's about all I've seen of it.
Is there anything you want to add?
I like Chikorita.
Fair enough.
Chikorita for ZA.
Hell yeah.
Ian, have you
It's my
played Gen 2?
starter.
Yes. I think I come out a bit more positive. Not that you didn't come out reasonably positive thinking about them, but I kind of see them as general improvements over the first gen. A lot of positive balance changes, and just, I mean, being able to revisit Kanto in Gen 2
Oh, you're right.
on
I
a Game
completely
Boy
forgot to touch on that.
was like, just considering that within the time it released is just kind of mind-blowing, and knowing the story behind how that even happened is just kind of mind-blowing as well. It's just like, how they did that is beyond my personal comprehension, but it does such a cool thing to really add to the breadth of the world and the region, and it kind of gets it so Gen 2 ends up feeling like almost the quintessential Game Boy Pokemon game because of that. But yeah, and I also quite enjoy the remakes. I feel like the partner Pokemon being able to follow you around does do a whole lot to the enjoyment of that game for me personally, because even though it's just like purely aesthetic, it just adds to having the relationship with your Pokemon, who are supposed to, be your partners. So it's just so cool seeing them hang around behind you, them have, minor reactions. Just makes it easier to get into the world, which Gen 2, Johto is definitely a world our region worth getting really into. And yeah, the Pokewalker is a really cool accessory. I mean, it is just a basic pedometer, but I liked being able to put my Pokemon in there and then walk around and accomplish some stuff. I'm just in general a fan of game accessories where, okay, you can sort of, while you have the game off, this thing will contribute something to the game, allow you to kind of play the game while you're away from it. And I always find those super cool. It's like, all in all, I put probably Gen 2 into, considering the current rankings, the OGs into high B and the remakes into A.
Any thoughts about Crystal?
I have not played Crystal.
Fair enough. That's why I kind of said it's not really different enough to warrant talking too much about from my perspective. But I don't know if anybody else had those thoughts. Before we move on, I am going to touch on the post game myself, and part of why I ranked them the way I did. I agree. It was on the Game Boy. It was probably pretty mind blowing. I actually was kind of looking forward to it when I was playing that original game, but unfortunately, the burnout killed me before I got there. Going back on that and playing the remakes, I I really think a lot of people that like go on about that kind of have nostalgia goggles on. I gotta say, because like if the main games for Gen 1 was Jim Elite Four Champion, whoo boy, that post game is almost nothing but that. I do agree it is kind of cool to go back and see how the regions change and see what the gym leaders are up to, but that's just not really enough to justify the work that gets put into it, especially since the levels that jumping there is, especially with the final extra battle that I won't spoil. I basically had to get a Mewtwo and rare candy it up to be able to beat that because the level it would require so much grinding without doing that. Then for me, that's just why it's cool in concept, but wasn't executed very well. But that's just my opinion on the post game and why it's not really going to change my ranking. Anyways, now that I've popped off, Kit, you have not played this generation as well. Or is there anything you want to comment on before we move on to Shads?
Honestly, my knowledge in terms of Gen 2 is just that's when dual typing started, that's when baby Pokemon were introduced, and that's when shiny Pokemon became a thing.
Fair enough.
Oh yeah, that's also a good point.
I did not know that was when shiny Pokemon became a thing, though.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well,
I mean,
because it was the first
color.
game in color. Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, my first encounter with a shiny at all, as far as I'm aware, was Gen 6, so... You know.
I will state that back in Gen 2, the way shiny Pokemon were determined was different than how they handle it now. It was based off of, I believe, stats or something.
Yeah, IVs and EV.
Yeah.
IVs, not the IVs, the EVs. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, Shads, what do you got for us?
Okay, so the other big thing that Kit kind of alluded to that hasn't been talked about, Gen 2 was the first one to have breeding.
Oh yeah.
I mean, kind of said that with the baby Pokemon, but fair enough.
Yeah, so you end up having this whole extra system that you can do that's not just battling, and that in turn will have ramifications later on when you really get into the competitive scene because you breed for the perfect Pokemon. Other than that, shiny Pokemon, again, it's a status symbol. But man, is it one effective status symbol, even if some of them are that weird radioactive green color.
Hey, I don't mind that radioactive green color. I think Espeon rocks that pretty well.
It's plutonium
Espeon
on.
does. Nidoqueen does not.
Fair enough.
I care more about the characters in Gen 2. Like, individually, but the storyline is very plain. Also, the level curve is just really wacky.
Yeah, gotta agree with you
I
on
think
that one.
Price's gym, I think, has like level like 30s or 40s. Price is the 7th gym leader.
Yeah, I've seen that in the Let's Play I'm watching.
Yeah,
it's so squished because you have 16 gym battles you have to squeeze in, and you can't have them at all taking place at level, 70, 80, 90. And that's just one of the faults of having a 100 cap level system, where it's so easy to move up the levels. The other big thing is that Johto introduced a bunch of cool Pokemon. So many of them aren't even available until post-game. You can't get, I think, Mischievous, Slugma, Houndour, Larvitar. So many of them are stuck in Kanto. I would say probably Gold and Silver I would put in C. They are less buggy than the original games. And they fix a lot of things that the original games didn't do great. but they still have issues. Gold, Crystal, I would put somewhere between C and B, just because adding the Suicune storyline really helps the story overall. And being able to play as a girl, that's 50% of Pokemon fans right there, suddenly being able to play as a character that looks similar to them. That's big. Heart Gold, Soul Silver, I would stick solidly in A tier. It doesn't it has all the benefits of Crystal with better balancing, slightly better encounter tables, slightly better leveling, but quality-wise, it's just really, really solid.
Fair enough. Yeah, I have to agree with a lot of your points, though. To address something else you said, with the difficulty being all over the place, I like the challenge, but the problem I have is like this. What I had with Gen 2 in general is just like it felt the most grindy to me. Like, not just because of the post game, just even the main game. I spent a lot more time grinding than I did in any other generation. But it is what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and put the originals into C, and I'll put Crystal at the top of C, to accommodate your views on the adding in the second gender. The remakes, I will stick in A for now. They may bump down to the top of B or stick to the bottom of A, but we'll put them there for now. Alright, Shads, you wanted Gen 3, so hit us off.
Oh, goody. People get to listen to me be biased.
Right.
Now, see, all you need to know about Gen 3 is it's the best thing ever, and then I'll go into S and we're all done here. I'm kidding. So, Gen 3 was a total overhaul of pretty much everything. This is the generation where natures got introduced, abilities got introduced, berry growing got introduced.
Oh, sorry, can I pause you for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I have a question. Since I do not remember much of my playthrough of the original Gen 2, was the berry mechanics added in 3, or was that just part of the remake?
Different berry system in 2.
Okay. Alright, sorry.
The modern berry system was introduced in 3.
Alright. Sorry.
Wireless communications got not wireless. Yeah, wireless, because you had a thingy with that you could stick into your Game Boy Advance that let it connect wirelessly. So you didn't have 4 Game Boys connected by a link cable.
I did not know that.
Nature of double battles meant that you could do multi-battles, and weather field effects. Graphics, of course, get an update because they're going from Generation 2 to Generation 3. It's new hardware, slightly better. Story has the biggest drastic change because you have not 1, but 2 different evil teams running around being eco-terrorists and fighting each other. Ruby and Sapphire were very good. They didn't have any major glitches or bugs. The biggest issues that they had were so much of the encounter table was divided between the 2 games, arguably more than Generation 1 and Generation 2. You also have a lot of differences between the 2 stories. In Ruby, you fight Team Magma and team up with Team Aqua. In Sapphire, you fight Team Aqua and team up with Team Magma. And because of the nature of the 2 teams, the starters aren't really created equal. There is a definitive best starter for each game, and it's never Torchic.
He's Torchic.
Rip.
I love Torchic, but it's not going to be effective against either team. So for that, I would say because they changed so much fundamentally, I would still stick Ruby and Sapphire into a high B, low A, because the biggest flaw is that they're not backwards compatible at all with the previous generations. So, like, the Pokemon from your first game ever, you can't get those into your modern games. There's no way to pass that Gen 3 choke point. Emerald is Generation 3's ultimate version. Arguably, I would say that of the ultimate versions they've done, it's the best one. It takes the diverging storylines of Ruby and Sapphire, combines it into a nice little bow where you have to fight both teams now, and focuses on Rayquaza being summoned to quell the fighting between the two teams. It keeps all the great things for Generation 3, also adds the Battle Frontier, which is a beloved community feature. Personally, I would put Emerald into S. That's personally because I'm biased.
I mean, we all have our
But
generational biases.
But post-game, you will have this giant region that you can still explore. The Reggie side quest, I mean, it was frustrating, sure, but it was also really fun. And you have a whole 7 facilities to battle in. It's the biggest battle frontier of any game. Realistically, it's probably better to go into A because the encounter tables issues, yeah, those didn't get fixed, and there are Pokemon that you cannot get in Emerald at all. So much for being an ultimate version. Ruby and Sapphire, I would... Obviously, since they're the remakes, you have the graphical updates, you've got all the extra new abilities, moves, types in this case. It has the fairy type that was introduced in Generation 6 that the originals don't have, and it has Mega Evolution, which is a really fun mechanic. The little bits of extra story added in with the Mega Stones and the ability to soar in the sky is really nice, and its post-game is lovely. This one I would put in S, and that's not just me being biased, it's just a really, really great game.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of your points. And I would also like to add that Gen 3 had one of the better soundtracks of the series. Not the best, but close to it. But the original version especially made great use of the Game Boy Advance's sound chip. The remakes, not as much, but they were still pretty good. I also did think the move to 3D in the remakes did a lot to bring Gen 3 to life. One thing I did not like about 3, and like I always thought this was a joke because IGN, this is the whole thing of the too much water. And I thought it was a joke until I sat down and played it. There's too much water. You see quite a lot of team surfing, and like as you said, that also harms the ability to use Torchic, which I did do in my playthrough of Emerald. And they did add the diving, I believe, in this generation, which was kind of interesting, but it was just added a bit more tedium as well. Though I do think going through the water areas was less painful in the remakes. I cannot, for the life of me, put on my finger why. It just was. Perhaps the graphical upgrades and the pseudo 3D just made it easier to navigate. I don't know. But anyways, the Battle Frontier, I will admit, I did not spend that much time with because to me it just felt like playing Pokemon Stadium, with a lot of that being using rented Pokemon and not getting experience from it. So I'm kind of biased against that. So for me personally, I'd put the originals into B because, like you said, they did quite a bit to advance the genre. But they weren't there's no reason to play them over Emeralds or the remakes. So I'd probably also put Emerald in the top A, and the remakes, I don't think they're quite good enough to be into S, but I also put them in the top A above Emerald. What do you think, Breaky? I know you've only played the remakes, but why don't you weigh in?
I really like the Delta episode.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
It was really fun. And I really like the Mega Evolutions. They are so cool. I liked Torchic and I used it in my playthrough. I had fun, so... yeah. I liked it. It was a really fun game to play. I have seen someone play through Emerald at least. But other than that, I don't really have any other thoughts.
So where would you put the remakes?
A-ish. Yeah, A.
Fair enough.
They're really good.
You're up, Ian.
I have also only played the remakes, but I feel like for me, it's been one of my favorite examples of the remakes, where it takes, as Chad's put out, what was already a really solid foundation, and just adds so many of the great aspects of the Gen 6 games to it, with especially megas. And honestly, I can't think of very many megas that they introduced for Gen 3 here that didn't feel word is escaping me, but like they all seemed like the right choices. Like I didn't think they wasted any mega slots. Although ideally, if we could get everything a mega, that would be awesome. But I don't think there's manpower or time for them to design megas for every Pokemon in the Pokedex. That would be insane. And I also really enjoyed getting. Actually, Shez, do you remember if it was version based, whether or not you'd get Latios or Latias to fly around with?
Version based, but they also had
Okay,
an event that went on for like forever where you could get the other one too.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed flying around with the Latios and or Latias, depending on the version there, because it was just it added a lot of fun depth to what was otherwise usually just me clicking on the map and going fly to here so I can go grab something in this town. But yeah, overall, I think I generally agree with a lot of what Chad said about the Gen 3 remakes. It just really puts a bow on what was already a really solid foundation. So I think I would also put them in S tier.
All right. Well, as much as I did enjoy those remakes, I can't quite justify myself doing that because they did do a lot to expand on what was good about the previous games, but they did cut out some of the Emerald content in the fact that.
Kit? What about Kit?
Sorry, what?
Doesn't Kit need to raid them?
I know. I'm gonna give her time. I just wanted to weigh in on what Ian was saying. For me, there's also the fact that they cut out the fact that the two storylines were joined in Emeralds, whereas this one they've kind of gone back to just being what version you're playing. And to really deal with the Rayquaza situation has been relegated to post game, which I think is fine. But I don't know, just cutting out that joint storyline, and as well as, even though I don't personally care about it, a lot of people didn't like the fact that they removed the Battle Frontier. So it's not quite the same gold
the
star.
Battle Frontier was a travesty.
Yeah, they did do quite a lot to improve Gen 3, but just the fact that they didn't quite make it the perfect improvement like they did with the Heart Gold and Soul Silver remake, as far as the remake quality, I would still keep it an A. But again, that's just my thoughts on it. Kit, you want to weigh in?
Oh, sorry.
So I'm in this weird position of I have played one of them, but I don't even think I have played 5 hours into the game. So I'm in this weird sort of situation of I'm not sure if I can really rate it because I have not gotten very far in the game. And to make it even more awkward, I think I got about 2 hours into the game originally, stopped playing it for literally years, finally picked it up again like in the last year, and have not picked it up since. Like, all the stuff the others have talked about, I have not even gotten to. Like, I haven't gotten to the Mega Evolutions, I haven't gotten to being able to fly everywhere. None of that.
If you don't think you're in a position where you're comfortable rating it yet, you don't have to. But any thoughts about like what you think about the game would be appreciated.
I mean, I'm just saying I'm not sure by this point I can really say much about specifically the one I played as Alpha Sapphire. Yeah, if I just base it off of what I've played so far, I don't think it would be a very high rating, so I don't think I can justify giving one at this time.
Fair enough. Alright, so I'm going to put the originals between Fire Red and Let's Go for now. Emerald and the remakes, I'm going to put into the top of A. Depending on how the other ones goes, I may move the remakes into S, but Emerald will probably stay top A. All right, Shads, Gen 4.
Okay, Gen 4, my first gen. So biggest upgrades from Gen 3 to Gen 4. You have no item limits in the bag. Before, bags all had a specific capacity. You could carry, I want to say it was like 60 or so items in Gen 3 in each pocket, and then you couldn't, carry anymore. It sucked. Gender differences for Pokemon. Form change Pokemon came into this generation as well. Most notably, you have Rotom, but then you also have in battle form changes. Oh wait, no, form changes here last gen with cast form. Never mind that. It was more widespread though. Wi-Fi battles, Wi-Fi communication. You could trade and battle people in Japan while being in the United States. Best quality of life would be the fact that you can run in buildings now. And the biggest one for battles would be the physical special splits, which technically started in Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, but was limited exclusively to the shadow moves. Before this, Pokemon moves being classified as a physical move or a special move was based solely on type, which is why you had Pokemon that we would look at it today and be like, oh, it's not that great because it's a physical attacker in terms of stats, but move pool wise, it also gets special moves. But maybe it's a Pokemon that used to get only physical moves based on type. Diamond and Pearl were very slow in terms of the story. There was a lot of backtracking and going through Mount Coronet. It was a good story. It took a while for it to get going. It's like, you drink a cup of coffee and you wait for the caffeine to kick in, and until the caffeine kicks in, you move at like 5 miles an hour. And then all of a sudden it goes from 0 to 100 really quickly. They have really good characters for the villains. Gym leaders are mostly forgettable. But it does also have a really fun feature in the Pokemon Underground. Also, unlike previous generation, you could put your Pokemon from Gen 3 into Gen 4 via the use of the Nintendo DS's GBA slot and having the Pal Park. Platinum is the ultimate version of Diamond and Pearl. All of the great things from Diamond and Pearl. Slightly better with the story. You have a whole new area for the story now, the Distortion World, which melted your brain a bit, because you had the characters moving not just along a fixed plane anymore. It would be swapping between, suddenly you go from walking on the walls to walking on the ceiling, or you'd surf up a waterfall, which you couldn't do outside, which was really cool. I wanted Diamond and Pearl to get the ORAS treatment. Diamond and Pearl did not get the ORAS treatment. I will say, for what they are advertised for as, faithful remakes to the first game, they deliver very well on that promise. They are faithful remakes. Unfortunately, they cut out all the platinum content. They don't have the quality of life upgrades from Generation 8 outside of, the fairy type and the extra moves and all that jazz.
They also have the XP share, do they not? I'm pretty sure they did.
I think so. But most people wouldn't consider that a plus. Most people consider that a big fat negative. Um, this is probably one of the most divisive games in the community because you have one camp that's like, oh, they don't like the graphics and they don't like that it's pure diamond and pearl, and they wanted a game like Oras and didn't understand that faithful remake means faithful remake verbatim. I would say diamond and pearl would go low B, high C. Platinum, I would put solidly in B. Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, I'm honestly not sure. I wouldn't put it down in D. I also don't think they're better than the originals. So I'd probably put those in C after Diamond and Pearl. I do think they're better than Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and Red, Blue, and Green by virtue of the fact that they aren't buggy unbalanced messes. But I wouldn't necessarily put them. I definitely wouldn't put them in B.
I mean, I wasn't around for it when they were released, but I do remember hearing a lot about when they were first released. They were kind of buggy. Like, I didn't have any problems with them when I played through them, but that was several years after their release. But I don't know. Maybe I heard wrong. Anyways, I agree with most of what you said. For me, I will say one thing about BDSP. I do think they are better than the original, at least, because they did expand the underground some. And they are definitely more viable to play with other people, especially since they have online play. And I do think of all the remakes, this one did get the best remastered soundtrack. Now, I won't say if Gen 4 had the best soundtrack in the series. It was kind of like somewhere in the middle, but they did an excellent job of remaking what that DS soundtrack. You cannot tell me that the theme for Team Galactic Battle doesn't slap. But beyond that, yeah, I really can't add too much to that. Platinum is definitely the first case we can say like this is the ultimate version for me. But I don't know. Gen 4 just did kind of feel like a step backwards compared to 3 in a bit. It's not bad by any means, but it's also not my favorite. I would probably put the originals into solid C. Or maybe a lower C, I don't know. Platinum I would definitely put like in the middle of B. And BDSP I would either put the bottom of B or the top of C. And Breaky, I know you've only played BDSP. What do you think?
I mean, I've not finished BDSP yet because I'm too scared to battle Cynthia. especially since the last gym, the final 8th gym doesn't have like items or like the trainer doesn't use items and stuff. All of a sudden, the Elite Four, they're all using items and have good strats, and I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? So, yeah, I never got to play the originals, but I don't think the remakes are that bad as like people make them out to be. I know that's controversial, but they're not that bad. And I had saw like some reviews saying that there was like a lack of fire types. I thought that was a joke. No, it was not.
No, that's very much true. Especially they did improve that a bit in Platinum, but like for BDSP in the originals, it's pretty like if you don't choose the butt monkey, then you're pretty much stuck with getting Houndoom in the other ground or fighting a Ponyta.
I mean, you can't get Magby in the underground as well.
True.
But yeah, rating wise, probably like somewhere in C. Again, I've not finished it, and I've also been trying to get the Pokedex filled out so I can get that shiny Manaphy home. But yeah, that's it.
All right. What about you, Ian?
I unfortunately very hard fell off my attempts at Gen 4. I like, again, as Chad's mentioned, wireless communication, internet, huge for that game. Obviously changed the way many people played Pokemon, of course, and opened up any sort of competitive scene to just a far wider breadth of people who can play. And for that, that's pretty darn amazing. And I think the story is, at least from what I've seen of it, and especially the characters that have had kind of the legacy and really do stick with people, that's I mean, again, Cynthia seems to be one heck of a character. I mean, they felt the need to reference them in other games.
Overrated.
I don't know, I get the impression it just all really sticks with people. So even though it might be a slow burn, I do rather feel like at some point I want to stick with it and try to get to actually beating those games. But all in all, my impressions of them weren't all that great because I played them during a time where I was desperately looking for something that wasn't 8 gyms and an Elite Four. And at least the very beginning of that game plays very much like 8 gyms and Elite Four, unfortunately. In regards to, so in that case, I'd put them about, low B, high C. In regards to the remakes, I think a lot of it is, as has already been mentioned, looking at what you personally are looking for out of a remake. If you're wanting something that is purely faithful to the original titles, or if you're wanting something that adds upon or even changes the original titles. I think as faithful remakes, they sure do faithful remaking well. So I feel like that shouldn't necessarily be against them. And I do feel like the aspects that they do add upon, as you mentioned, Shigs, with the underground, it just like that's really improved. So all in all, I'd also put it slightly above the originals personally. But I think both for me just kind of didn't quite hit. But I'm hoping I can manage to get back to them at some point soon here.
Fair enough. Kit, you have not played 4 yet, and the only one you have access to is BDSP, I know, but, do you have anything you want to weigh in?
I mean, it's a shame you didn't count Arceus in this, because I can make a comments about Arceus, but...
There'll be a time to talk about Arceus, but that's not today.
Yeah, no, my knowledge is very limited on Generation 4. Like, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is a freaking long time ago, I watched a Let's Play of Platinum, but I generally don't remember that Let's Play at all.
But I know the thing that's going to stick with you the most is that distortion world, I'm willing to bet.
Probably.
Yeah,
I'd say that.
I think that's a lot of where the divisiveness for BDSP comes from, is that distortion world. But in any case, I'm going to put the originals into B between gold, silver, and red, blue. Platinum I will put between sapphire and fire red. And BDSP I will put the top of C for now. So, for Gen 5, we've got Kit.
Alright, everybody.
Oh, and before you start, we will be treating... Since this is the only generation that had a proper sequel, we will be treating this as 2 separate generations, in which case I will present for Black and White 2.
Because I have not played those yet.
Mm-hmm.
Should.
I know. I've not been able to find them.
They're expensive as hell.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. Anyways.
The link to the GoFundMe is in the description below. Please donate to help Kit get her very own copy of Black or White 2.
Oh my god.
Get one for me too, because I don't have those games either.
Anyways.
Hey, who wants a game with a very interesting storyline, tons of brand new Pokemon, and in my opinion, a lot of really interesting characters? Look no further than Generation 5, Black and White. Generation 5 also introduced quite a few things, such as, like, the fact that seasons exist, so you have, like, summer, fall, winter, and spring. You also have rotation battles, which have not returned since. Which is a shame because I actually thought those were really interesting.
I think they are in Gen 6.
Yeah, I was
Are
gonna say,
they?
I think they are in Gen 6.
You just have
Is
to
that
go to, I
rotation
think, a certain
battles or
cafe.
inverse?
Oh.
I mean, there's both, but they are like in like specific cafes, I think,
Oh.
from what I remember.
Yeah, I did
Well,
not.
more on
I did
more
not
on
do
my
those, so I can't comment.
more on the Gen 6 layer for me. Triple battles, which I know did not come back, unfortunately. Another interesting thing, in my opinion. Hidden abilities and fully animated Pokemon sprites. Too bad this is the last generation to have animated sprites before going to the 3D models, which, in my opinion, is probably the best that Pokemon have looked. I really like those animated sprites. As I mentioned before, the story is really interesting. Team Plasma is an interesting group in terms of evil teams. Oh yeah, Hidden Abilities were added in this game too. I have mixed feelings about Hidden Abilities because sometimes the Hidden Abilities are really stupid broken, and sometimes they're like absolutely not useful to the Pokemon whatsoever. And they also made them weirdly difficult to get on a Pokemon. So it's like, what's the point? Um uh, I mean, like, I think it's safe to say I have severe nostalgia for Generation 5. As I said earlier, it's the first generation I got to play, and because of that, it's definitely going in S tier for me. Shats.
Um, I would say for me personally, it's Nick. I love graphically. I agree. This is the best that Pokemon has looked. I do really like the 3D games, but for me, it's the sprited game just looks so much better. Story, great story. I care about a lot of the characters. I remember a lot of the characters. Even that weird gym leader that, nobody liked. Clay was an asshole. Just saying, he was. Hidden abilities, I like them. I think they make a lot more mons viable that originally weren't viable because they were really great mons, but they got saddled with a really not great ability. I liked the grotto system.
Oh yeah, the grotto system.
The wireless play, the dream world that you could do, which unfortunately you can't do anymore.
Nope, they
And
killed that actually really quick. I think it was like not even going for 2 years before they shut it down.
I still have a Palkia that's stuck on there.
No.
Yeah, big sad. And this generation had my favorite version of Global Trading Station, the GTS negotiations. But I can't quite put it into S. There's heavy divergence between the two games, and it goes a lot more than just which box legendary you have. There's a full-on 20 Pokemon lines that you can't get at all in Pokemon Black because you don't have access to White Forest. Objectively, White is the better game. There are more Pokemon available. The characters that depend heavily on divergence are better in White. You get Iris instead of Drayden, and let's be real, nobody cares about Drayden. He's some weird random old.
Oh,
I was about to say, those are fighting words.
Jerry's a very cool old man.
He's also very weird. Iris shows up in this story in Castelia City in both regions. Iris is only a gym leader in the one. Drayden, I don't think even shows up at all in Pokemon White. Been a while since I've played Pokemon White though, so I could be wrong about that. Even the music's different. You have more old-timey music in
white, you've got more futuristic techno-y music in black. So I would put these in high A, but I can't give them an S because of the heavy divergence between the regions.
I honestly did not know there was that much of a difference between black and white. And for the record, I did myself play white, so my opinion may be a bit biased. But yeah, I this was honestly one of my favorite generations too. I'm still not entirely sure if it's my favorite yet because it's kind of like at a very odd spot with the other game that's like in a contender for that. But we'll get into that later. I really don't have many criticisms for it. Like, the most I can say against it is just the fact that I'm not. This is also one of my least favorite generations in terms of the designs, but since we're not talking about that, it doesn't matter to the ranking. The soundtrack was decent. I do agree that the visuals were probably the best of all the 2D games. This has had probably one of the largest dexes. Generational dexes out of all of them. I have a like-hate relationship with the fact that most of the returning Pokemon are not available until post-game. Like, on one hand, it does like force you to actually get used to the new generation, but on the other hand, like if there are certain types where there's Pokemon you don't like at all, you're kind of screwed. And then there's the freaking elemental monkeys. Like, may they never come back. But other than that, like, it's a great. It has one of the best and most interesting storylines out of all of them, and I definitely appreciated it for that. Like, putting more emphasis on story instead of just Gym, Elite Four champion is kind of what I wanted for Pokemon, and this one delivered. So for me, it's an S tier. And Breaky, I know you haven't played these, but do you have any thoughts?
I want to play them. The only actual thing I've seen of this game is someone trying to like 100% it, and all like I think get filled out the Pokedex and like all the badges and stuff you could get into it or something. That's it.
Fair enough. What about you, Ian?
Well, first, Tepig Gang.
No.
Yeah.
Tepig!
No.
Yes, Tepig! I love Tepig.
Speaking of fighting words.
Literally.
But I mean, I honestly, this is the first game where is this the first game where the region is like actively based off of a like country in the real world? Because I mean,
No.
No.
They all have been based off of a country in the real world. I just think this is the first one where it wasn't based in Japan.
Okay,
Correct.
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah, no. Now thinking back to that, yeah, gotcha. But either way, as an American, I thought the way they ended up adapting the U.S. into a Pokemon game was really cool. Got a lot of cool aspects. I feel like it added a lot. I don't know. I felt like my familiarity with what they were going for added a lot to my experience. But yeah, I just really enjoyed the world. Really enjoyed the mons. I did unfortunately play black, so rip me.
I mean, I played black too.
I played both.
Probably impacted my opinion of the game a bit, but when you don't think about what all you're missing out on, it's not too bad. So yeah, I think kind of high A for me for those two.
So we've got 2 S's and 2 high A's. Being the fact that we've got high A's, I'm going to slip this one and make it our first S.
Woo!
Throw confetti.
Yay.
Now, Black and White 2, ooh. We went from a high S to something that's not so much so, because, like, I love the idea of making a sequel to one of the games, and it's, like, kind of maybe giving us something similar to what Gen 2 did in its post-game, but done right. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. The story was cut down so much. It basically has a strong start, and then it goes Gym, Elite Four champion, up until about, I think, the 7th gym. where the story finally kicks in and stuff starts to happen. And even and to get like some of the stuff that happens before that, you have to get, I don't remember if it was a you have to do a link cable or if you have to get a password from Black and White 1, but some of the events are locked behind doing that. And being the fact that I was playing on a flash card meant I couldn't do that. So I had to go on YouTube those scenes. Fun. I do think the soundtrack was better in this one than Black and White 1. I will give it that. I think the gyms themselves were also a bit more interesting. They were a lot more varied in their themes, and they kind of perfected the fact that there are mini mazes with trainers in them. Like, I've never been a fan of it, but if you do like gym fights, these are the ones to play. But that's not really what I'm looking for a Pokemon game. And just the fact that they went from like something more story and lore heavy with good progression to just going back to falling into bad habits, just really a downer for me. I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk about because it is more or less the same game. They did add a couple of new features. Like, I do appreciate the fact that I think this was the first game that added the ability to see where Pokemon spawn without having to look up a guide or something. I could be wrong about that. That was a nice quality of life feature, but that's really all the good things I could say about that. To me, it was just a big disappointment. And I would probably either put it at a low B or high C. And since Breaky, I know you haven't played this one, and it's more or less the same as Black and White 1, we'll just skip right on to Ian.
Let me play it.
I got bad news too. I've only seen people play through this one, but from seeing people play through this one, it seems fun to me. But yeah, unfortunately, I can't add much.
Anything you want to add in before Kit before Shad's fights?
For me, as was previously established, I've not played it myself. I have seen a Let's Play of it. Probably about a year or two ago by this point. And one of the things I've noticed when people talk about Black and White 2 is a lot of them do consistently say that is not as good, but I've also heard that it's like overall opinion of it has gotten a little bit better over the years. Like, it's developed a little bit of a cult following. The other thing I know a lot of people talk about is the badge system that exists in that game. So yeah, that's probably all I would say about it.
All right, Shad's over to you.
Okay, get your boxing gloves ready. So I do agree that it's not as good as Black and White. But I think that if you look at it as trying to continue where the story and the region left off, I think it portrays a lot of things really well. You have a bunch of new settlements. I like the fact that they kind of swap up the order of how you visit places. It's a new... Let's be real. Not all trainers are going to start from the first, quote-unquote, professor's town in a region. They're going to start from wherever they grew up. You don't go over to Juniper's little November town. You stay in your city. And Bianca comes over to you. I like how they kept the characters that were established in the game before it as important people, even if they're not just gym leaders anymore. I mean, Chili's Island and Crest, they're running their restaurant full time. Loretta is full-time archaeologist. I like that the very first place that you visit in Black and White is the very last place that you visit in Black and White 2. And conversely, the very last places that you visit in Black and White 1, the eastern side of Unova, is part of the story. There's a gym there. You have a whole bunch of new settlements, and the schism between the two halves of Team Plasma, those that genuinely believe in being better for Pokemon, and those who are just crazy justice fanatics. That's also, I find, pretty realistic. Let's be real. When giant organized criminal organizations falter, not everyone's going to quit doing it. Some are going to keep on going. Others are going to be like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's not like, Team Rocket, Giovanni's gone. His executives all collectively decide that they're going to take over Goldenrod City Radio Tower and try and hail it out of the A. That is really fun. It gives you incentive to do things. It gives you, such as Elite Four. Join Avenue is really interesting as well. I think.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
have
you
heard
get a
about that.
You get a whole bunch of really rare items. A lot easier this game because of Join Avenue. I do
Yeah.
agree that having so many of the button-up events stuck behind needing a key from the opposite game or a previous game isn't great.
Isn't
But
difficulty also locked behind a
difficulty
key?
is also locked behind a key,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's stupid.
which is stupid. That's why I would say I would put it in low A, high B, personally. It's definitely not as good as the original. But
Yeah.
the story was a good continuation, and also the side quests, getting all the different legendaries, those are also really fun.
Yeah, you did bring
Oh.
up a few things that I had kind of forgotten about, and you do make some points that I do agree with. Yeah, it is a better continuation of the story than again what Gen 2's post game did. But it just for me the biggest problem was the pacing of it because again
Pacing is long.
it starts off strong and then it just completely falls off until about Gen 7. I will admit I probably would have had a better opinion of it if I hadn't played them back to back. But
Probably.
given your
Probably.
opinion of them, I will compromise and put them between base Gen 3 and Platinum.
Okay.
Before we move on to the next generation, do you mind if I make another comment that I meant to say during the for black and white part?
Sure.
Something I forgot to mention is Generation 5 is the first instance of them doing the shiny locks, which I really do not like. I think it's a
Nobody
very
likes that.
stupid mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never understood that either, and I'm not even a shiny hunter.
Alrighty, here is our jump into 3D. Obviously, these are the first two handheld games, part of the main series, to look into 3D. Although, of course, we had Pokemon Stadium, Coliseum, XD, giving us a taste of what a 3D Pokemon game could look like. These were the first that were whole proper. This is our new generation. This is our jump into 3D, and I think it's, and it, in doing so, sort of to help bolster that jump, adds in the Mega Evolutions, the first of the following 4, I believe, gimmicks to help add something to existing Pokemon, give them some sort of oomph. In this case, giving them a certain Pokemon an additional evolution, for which the plot, while not entirely centered around it, is still very much following it, so it feels very, very fitting within the world and such. But yeah, and then while its story is fairly weaker, it does do a good job to, or does do a decent job of setting up a world that, of course, is worth returning to. And I believe was this the first game to make XP share mandatory?
Not necessarily. You can turn it off.
Yeah, I think you can turn it off in this game. I think it was
Okay.
7
Yeah, you
where
can
it was
turn it off.
mandatory.
Okay.
No, you could turn it off in Gen 7 as well.
Was it? Maybe it was 8 then.
Okay.
I recently turned it on in Gen 7 when I went back to it.
All right, I'll take your
yeah.
word for it.
Okay.
It
No, I
was
mean,
Gen 9 when it was. No, I think you could turn it off still in 8. But
I don't
Gen
think you
9,
can turn it off tonight.
I
I'm
don't
pretty
remember
sure
being
it's
able to turn-
9.
Okay, but
I
either
don't
way,
know.
Gen 6 you could definitely turn off, and then yeah. But which gen was the one to introduce XP share?
Well, it's been a thing since Held Items. This was just the first one where EXP share applied to every single Pokemon in your party, not just the person not just the one holding it, because it was a Held Item before.
Gotcha. But yeah, and outside of that, I don't know. It's a bit of a smaller generation, at least Pokemon-wise, compared to the others. I believe consisting of just short of 70 new mons in comparison to, again. Oh, was someone about to interject there?
No, you're good.
Okay. I would say if I'm saying something wrong, please correct me. In comparison to others adding in 100 plus, so it did end up feeling a bit smaller in scope to a lot of the games, a lot of the other gens, but it was a good start out to 3D. This was personally my the first Pokemon games I had where there was a friend group I could interact with, trade, battle, and such was of course such a huge part of these games, so I'm a bit personally partial to them because of that. And I mean, they do really make training and fighting Pokemon just a ton of fun in these games. You got the mini games, Pokemon and Me, and the Super Training, which just turn what was kind of a bit of a, and what I still feel is a bit of a dull grind of EV training into something that's it's still kind of repetitive after a while, but it's a bit more fun. I think I prefer it as a mini game over having to mess around with items and such. But yeah, overall, I feel like they're pretty solid A's for me. Okay.
Oh boy, I'm about to probably make people mad because honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Generation 6. I didn't finish Generation 6, but I'm pretty sure I'm like near the end.
I think you
I
were on
like
Gym 7 or 6 or 7 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, something like that. But for me, so much of the game just feels very forgettable. It just feels very like the whole Gym Elite Four champion. Like some other people have mentioned for other generations. That was how I fell through it. I do not like Mega Evolutions, honestly.
I'm gonna fight you.
Fine.
You want a 30-second head start or a minute head start? I don't know if I can hold Bricky back that long.
Like, I know, like, Mega Evolution was, like, a really big thing because it's, like, the first introduction to a major battling mechanic. But for me, it just... And this is going to be a running trend with a lot of the battle mechanics in future generations. It just feels like a waste of everybody's time for maybe ever so slightly better advantage, assuming you didn't already have an advantage to begin with. As I said, like the whole entire like story, I don't really remember very well to be fair because of how long it's been since I played it. But the fact that I don't remember kind of just for me personally, just kind of speaks to me as the story was not memorable enough for me personally to remember. And for that, I'm probably going to put it like a really low C or maybe a D.
So for me, it's like I like Mega Evolution. I don't think most of the megas that got megas in specifically X and Y necessarily needed them. I mean, you can't look me in the eye and tell me that Mewtwo needed not one, but 2 megas.
Yes, because
You
he's
also
that cool.
you also have the issue of disparity. Um, Charizard, aside from Mewtwo, is the only Pokemon to get 2 megas. Other Gen 1 starters don't. The Kalos starters don't get megas. Blaziken was the only Gen 3 starter to get a mega in these games. I do think that Mega Evolution, I like Mega Evolution. I think out of all the battle mechanics they've added, it's been the best one. But I don't think a lot of the Pokemon that got megas in X and Y needed megas. You do have the introduction of fairy types in X and Y, which is highly needed for balancing purposes, even though it nuked my beloved dragons into the ground. But, and it has the roller skates. I love the roller skates. They're my favorite mobility item. I like them better than bikes. I like doing the tricks. I agree with Kit when I say that this character and the stories are very forgettable. The two most memorable characters I can think of are AZ and Emma/Essentia. One of them is a 3,000-year-old, basically walking mummified piece of beef jerky, and the other one doesn't even show up until post game.
Me over here being like, who are those two people you just said?
Sorry, Kit. Spoilers.
I mean, to be fair, AZ was in the ZA trailers.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And I think he shows up a couple times before like the end of the story. I think
Yeah,
you
he
run
does.
Into him a few times. Yeah, so you might have run into him and just don't remember him, Kit.
Probably.
Like he shows up and he says 2 things and then he leaves. Yeah, never would I have thought that an 8-foot tall man would be not very memorable, but yeah, not very memorable. It has a lot of great environments. The city with the big sundial, the Glimmer Cave. Loved those places. But it's like, I can't even remember who the rivals are. And I'm pretty sure you have more than one of them in this game.
Yeah, there's 2.
Yeah, they were like...
Yeah, Serena/Callum, which is basically the player you didn't choose. Serena/Callum, Shauna, Tiano, and Trevor.
Yeah, I can't remember any of those except for Serena/Callum. They're your rivals. They're supposed to be like the most memorable character after you. I would put these probably in B. I can give it some grace, because, I mean, jumping from 2D to 3D is not exactly easy, especially at the turnaround time that they had between Black 2, White 2, and X and Y. But I wouldn't put it over Platinum or Fire Red Leaf Green. I'd put it down at the bottom of B.
Yeah, actually, I would kind of like to briefly change your mind, because looking at A tier again, it's just like, okay, I do like these games, but I cannot say I feel like they're better than any of the games in A tier. So I think I would put mine back to B.
See, for me, how I would describe these games is they're a slow burn. The beginning has an okay start, but between Gym 1 and 2, there's a lot of, like, random BS you have to do, like going through that one dude's mansion. But after you get through Gym 2, it does start to pick up. Once you start dealing with Team Flare. I do agree that, like, a lot of the characters are just kind of meh, but to me that's, like, describing a lot of the Pokemon games. But, I thought the story, like, get through the slow burn and start to simmer, I thought it was pretty decent, and I think it concludes quite well. Megas, I'm kind of split on. On one, they're a good idea, but they weren't implemented that well. There's a lot of times they feel more like flash than substance. And yeah, there is disparity between what did and what didn't, and the fact that Gen 6 starters didn't was kind of stupid. I'm hoping they remedy that in ZA. I do like the region, even though Lumio City is kind of a pain in the butt to navigate. That's probably bad news for me when ZA comes out. But I don't know. Actually using them in battle, I never really felt I had to, apart from countering other megas, in which case there's only like 2 or 3 trainers in the whole game that do it. So I probably would have had more fun with it if I'd played multiplayer. I don't know. I had a pretty good time with it. Maybe my feelings are a bit more subjective, but I would probably put it in as a low A.
Yeah.
Well, I know you have strong feelings for this game, Ricky. Let's wrap it up.
It's my favorite gen, so it's S.
Real.
Except for Hallwood.
I also, what I liked, but I already said, I love the roller skating. It was so much fun. I like the little skidoos you could ride in that one area in the map. Those were so much fun. You couldn't go far, but it was fun to ride them. And some of the Pokemon models had surfy. Some of the Pokemon had surfy models like Lapras in the gen. I don't remember if it was in both the Hoenn remakes and Palos, but those were cool. And I love Mega Evolution. I don't think every Pokemon should have a Mega Evolution, because I think that kind of, like, for me, that gets rid of like the interesting part of it. Because since so few Pokemon had the Megas, it was mainly Gen 1, but for some reason, with Diancie literally being the only one Gen 6 Pokemon to have a Mega, I hope that changes in ZA. But yeah, the other battle mechanics weren't as interesting to me since every Pokemon could do it, so that's what I like about Megas. I think that's about it.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention when I was talking, I do think the transition to 3D was pretty good. And I honestly like these models in the 3DS games more than I do the Switch 3D. But maybe that's just me. Anyways, we're all over the place with this one. We got one S, one low A, 2 Bs, and a low C.
I think that makes it
Maybe
in
at
between
least
B and A.
Yeah.
Low A.
I'm going to go ahead and put it under Let's Go for now.
Okay.
Better than Let's Go.
Well, I get the feeling we're going to be talking about this one again, revisiting this one once we're done with everything else. So we'll put a cap on that. Alright, so next we got is the Gen 7, and we're also, much like with Black and White 2, we're going to be treating Ultra and Regular as 2 different entries.
Yep. And I have opinions.
I'll get the box and gloves again.
Okay.
I don't know if they'll be for me or somebody else. I'm just holding on to them.
So, Generation 7 was the second generation I actually played after Generation 5. I did not get a hold of Generation 6 until, like, later. So, my opinion is not the greatest for Generation 7 because, like, I'm not a huge fan of various things pertaining to this game. Just like what I said with Generation 6, it is better in terms of like the sort of gym vibe, but only slightly, because they make you do instead of like gyms, they have you do these like challenges, and at the end you fight like a boss Pokemon, which is different. But for me personally, I did not particularly like that change. I don't think it makes it any better. The story's kind of all over the place, in my opinion. Like, I get where they were trying to go with the story, but the story gets so put on the back burner for, like, probably 2/3 of the game. And then it just was like, oh, right, there's a story. We need to pull this back in and remind people that there's a story going on. And it's all centered around, in my opinion, one of the dumbest things ever, which is the fact that there is Cosmog is like the MacGuffin for the game, and I'm just like, I do not like Cosmog, how it was handled in the game either. In terms of the Ultra games, I really did not like the Ultra games. I did not actually. I disliked them so much. I actually have not fished the Ultra. Because it just felt like an even worse story, and it felt like it was like a carbon copy of like a large chunk of the stuff that you do just in Sun and Moon. So not only was the story, in my opinion, worse, but then you just retrace so many things over the course of the game. Honestly, I think the Ultra games should have been a DLC for the original, not a separate game. So because of that, I probably put Generation 7, Sun and Moon in C, and then Ultras. I might put that in F, because I really did not have a fun time with them.
I mean, to be fair, you do have to add an asterisk to that if you were nuzlocking.
I was nuzlocking it because I was trying to give myself something interesting, because, like, honestly, I think I would have quit playing it even sooner if I wasn't nuzlocking it. Like, genuinely, the Ultra games are the first time I genuinely was not having a good time with a Pokemon game.
Important question.
Yeah.
How far did you get in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon? Can we, like, have context about, like, what point in the story you left off in?
Shoot. I think I got up to the electric trial, I believe. So that's So that's like, I think, like 2/3 of the way through the game, if I recall correctly.
Okay, because the story definitely does have a huge divergence towards the end. I don't know if you hit that or not.
I probably did, but considering how much of a slog the first part was, I don't think I would have enjoyed it particularly much.
All right, Shads, what do you think?
So, Generation 7 is kind of interesting. In terms of the environment, I really like it. Having the biggest difference between the two games be the time that you start, where if it's Moon, you're playing primarily during the night, and Sun, you're playing primarily during the day. I think that was pretty cool. It's a little subtle thing, but it's also neat. I'm indifferent about the changeover from gym to trials. At the end of the day, fundamentally, they're the same thing. You have a challenge of some sort, be it solve a puzzle or fight something. And then at the end, there's a boss trainer / Pokemon that you fight. The tutorial section of the games, both games, is way too long.
Yeah.
And by God, that stupid Rotom Dex doesn't have a mute button.
Oh, man.
Yep.
Z moves are also, in my opinion, substantially worse than Megas. It's a whole... You take up a whole item slot, and you get one turn for a move that can miss.
Right. I forgot they can miss.
I will say, though, I do think once you get through the tutorial, the story for the two games, it does diverge eventually. You have a bigger focus on Lily in the first game, Gladian in the second game, in my opinion. It is a bit weird to wrap your head around the idea that you have borderline psychotic Lucamine wanting to have her brain sucked out by a Nihilego in the first game, and in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, she's definitely not that crazy. In terms of final, fights that peek at the story, not the champion, but, versus, the evil team leader or something like that, I think both games arguably have one of the best. Ultra Necrozma was punishing. For a game that is marketed for kids, it was surprisingly difficult. A lot of people ended up cheesing it with Zoroark. I ended up having to toxic stall it out. I do like the Ultra Wormhole traversals that you can do to catch all the extra legendaries. I think that's a neat way of making it so that you can get the non-regional evolutions of certain Pokemon and get the extra legendary Pokemon from previous games without overcrowding the main region. And having the increased shiny rates is nice too. I care about the characters a lot more in Generation 7 than Generation 6. I can actually tell you about some of them, so they're already more memorable.
Screw Hal.
What?
I said screw Hal.
He was very enthusiastic about his donuts. I can appreciate that as somebody who is also very enthusiastic about donuts.
Fair enough.
The Battle Tree was definitely a better facility, in my opinion, than the Battle Mycin from Generation 6. Overall, I would say I would put these in 2B. Both of them. I think the biggest fault is that they released so soon together and are just so similar. There's not really a need to play one over the other. If you've played the regular Sun and Moon games, there's no reason to play Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, aside from getting a couple extra Ultra Beasts. If you played Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, there's no point in playing Sun and Moon.
Yeah, I wish I knew that beforehand.
You and a lot of other people. Individually, they're both very good games, but I wouldn't put them higher than B for certain.
So for me is where I'm going to have to diverge on this. And I will state right now that I have not played the original. I have read up on the differences. But my opinion is going entirely off of the Ultra games. And I'm going to start off by saying I kind of disagree about the Z moves. I actually think having a risk-reward system and them taking an item slot and they can miss really adds a bit more depth to the combat. And I was actually using them, unlike a lot of the other gimmicks in the late generation, combat gimmicks in the late generation. Because, number one, everyone can do it, provided you have the item for it. And number two, being able to see something come out that you don't have a type match for, or even if you do, it's just that much stronger, you can put your bets on that Z move. Whether it's something like Mega or Dynamax, you're primarily just countering the other Mega or Dynamax. I actually really enjoyed Z moves. Again, I was using them. I'm not a fan of the region, but that may also be maybe that I'm not a fan of the place it's actually based off in real life either. But yeah, I agree. The characters are far more interesting. The story, again, this is going off of Ultra. I thought was not quite as good as Black and White, but this is easily the second best of them. I appreciate the fact that Ultra gets really balls to the wall later in the game. Like this story just goes like from 0 to 9, like about 3/4 of the way through, and I love it for it. Like, I was invested. In my opinion of this game, honestly, when I started playing it, was just like, it's okay. And the more I played it, the more I came to enjoy it. And the soundtrack is great. They even had the good conscience to change the original main battle music to something different, because the main battle music in the original game sucked. And adding all the Ultra Beasts was kind of interesting. I didn't really way too much into that apart from what you had to, but seeing some of the forms were pretty interesting. Everybody says Necrozma is like the hardest thing ever, and while it was challenging, I got through it on my first time without cheesing. So I don't know what I did specifically, but I did not have that hard of a time. But again, I appreciate the challenge. I appreciate the storytelling. Visually, it was just better than X and Y, even though it was the same engine and models. There was a lot more flair to it for me. The petting mechanics, like, I know a lot of people liked it for that. I don't, just for me, like, it's not quite as good as Black and White, but it's everything I want for a Pokemon game again, and I give it an S.
Oh wait, I forgot something.
What?
This game didn't have HM moves. That was pretty big.
Ride Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was also
Yeah.
another huge improvement.
I would
So
change
much
my
better than the
rating.
HM.
I would change my rating then to like higher up in B tier, because I forgot that.
Yeah.
Not having to carry a Bidoof around.
I will say I'm like willing to diverge for the originals, because again, I haven't played them, that I would definitely insist on putting them lower than Ultra. But yeah, S tier for me for Ultra. Alright, Breaky, what do you got for us?
I have not finished Sun and Moon because I was a child and had no idea what I was doing when I played them. I got lost at some point as well because I lost the fight, went back to the mainland to change out my Pokemon. I could not figure out how to get there. Although when I booted it up again recently, I found out I was in a different area than I was and not where I thought I was, so I guess I somehow found my way where I was supposed to go, but yeah. I somehow have not played Ultra Sun and Moon somehow, even though I know I asked for them at some point, and I do want to play them just for shiny hunting. But I don't remember much of this of Gen 7, honestly. I remember being excited because it wasn't going to be the typical like gym Elite Four champion stuff. But I mean the island challenges were fundamentally the same. I do not like Lynn's final evolution at all.
I was gonna ask about Litten, if Incineroar was included in the cat Pokemon earlier.
Not really.
Darn.
I don't like it.
Poor Incineroar.
Like it's probably good fighting wise, but I stayed with the Litten until like recently, where I thought, this current battle and I'm stuck at, like, you know what, it's probably good if I actually like evolve my Pokemon. So I like the how the games were like, I think 12 hours apart.
Yeah,
I
they
like
were.
that. And I do like how the nighttime looks better than the daytime. But I never finished these games because, again, I was a stupid child. I ranked them maybe like B, and then I don't have opinions on Ultra Sun and Moon.
Yeah, and before we
Oh,
move on,
yeah.
I will say part of the reason that's like I would probably put this below Black and White is just because Team Skull is cringe. Anyway, moving
I
on.
don't think not to have them be like fully evil. I mean, they're cringe, sure, but like it was refreshing to have the quote unquote hidden villain
Mm.
versus
Yeah.
the one that's you expect to be the big bad.
Yeah, I like Team Skull. They were funny.
Yeah. I did also like the post game in Ultra as well. So that's another thing point I would give to it. Anyways, Ian, let's have me finish this off.
So I kind of want to circle back to Gen 6 here for just a moment because I forgot
no.
something
Go ahead.
that is very important. PSS is amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The PSS is the best online interface I think we've had for any of the games up until this point. Like, it is just such straightforward and so easy to use. It made finding your friends, battling, trading just so much easier from my perspective, and I was heartbroken when not only it was gone in Gen 7, but replaced with something that was just kind of baffling to me. I don't even remember what it was called for sure. It was like a parade thing, right?
Oh, that.
The plaza
Uh,
thingy.
Yeah.
Island Plaza.
Why?
Yeah, Island Plaza.
Yeah, why?
I thought that was kind of interesting.
It was cute aesthetically, but it felt like they had something really going with the interface of the PSS and the UI that just like here it was just we're really treading backwards. Thankfully the later games make improvements, but overall for Gen 7 for me it's a lot of the smaller things that really bring it together. I really like the ride Pokemon. I like not having to have an HM slave, especially since I'm still salty about how my idiot self made my shiny Greninja in Gen 6 an HM slave for some reason.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
So rest in peace, shiny Greninja. Cool as fuck, but like it's not doing anything. But ride Pokemon really cool. I love the regional variants of different Pokemon. This being the first gen we got regional variants in. Just nice way to shake up some returning Pokemon while also kind of making them feel like they fit in the region, which is something that in retrospect did seem kind of strange in the past. It's just like, okay, but why is Executor the same everywhere? Why wouldn't Executor be a palm tree in the island nation? Like that just, or island region, that just tracks, that makes sense. I will admit that I generally prefer Megas over Zemus, but also thankfully they both exist in this game. So it's kind of like, well, although you do have to, it's not until post game, right, that you unlock the Mega Bracelet?
I think so.
Yeah, because I think it's not until the Battle Tree. But either way, they're both existent, so they were fun to have. And while I agree that the challenges, the trials are no fundamentally different than the gyms. Something about the way getting there, I guess something about Alola as a region, in the story you being their first leading up to being their first Pokemon champion, is kind of like everything about it feels a bit hodgepodged a bit, kind of like this is all thrown together, but it kind of gives the journey to each part a bit. I don't know, like the last trial especially kind of sticks with me because it felt like it was just kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
It was.
Yeah, I mean it was just. But I think I also just kind of prefer the boss Pokemon fights over regular trainer fights. Because it's just, I felt like they added something. It was interesting trying to, get my team around a boss rather than, just the typical trainer fight. But I do understand and agree that objectively they are fundamentally different from gyms. And you do really see that in later generations when they begin to mix the two, that just like, yeah, it can definitely get stale after a while, but I don't know, I quite enjoyed them when I got to play through them. And I quite like the mons in this generation. Like this was the one that introduced Slandit, however we want to pronounce it. Which I really,
Lavander.
No,
really like.
What?
no.
I don't know. I'm a really big fan of the region and its vibe. Just a lot of fun. So for me, it's also with the combination of everything ends up being S tier for both the games. Although I do kind of agree that they don't work together all that great. They're best enjoyed as, you know, as you guys mentioned, playing one or the other and not necessarily both back to back, because there was definitely some fatigue in 2017 when I was playing Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon after
Yeah,
playing
I
Sun and
remember
Moon
that.
the year
I remember
prior.
that discussion when you were talking about that back in the day.
Just like, yeah, this is the same shit for the most part.
Yeah.
That was a bit annoying, but I still got through it.
See, that's for me a big part of why I just enjoyed Ultra as much as I did, is because I didn't play them. Not only did I not play them back to back, I'd only played one version, so I was, blown away by Ultra. Now, so we're all over the place again. So this time I think we're going to do a recount, and for this one I'm going to ask you guys to try your best to just detach the fact that a lot of you played through both and you had disappointment for one or the other, and just kind of vote for Gen 7 in general. Like, just pick whichever one you like and vote like the best of the two, and tell me where you would want to place it, and we'll go one at a time. So I'll recuse myself from the original since I hadn't played it, and Briki can recuse herself from Ultra for the same reason. So for the original, Ian, you say you still would place this one in an S.
Yes.
Kit, where would you put the original?
Still C.
And Shads?
I'd still put it in a B. I mean, it's a good game in my opinion. It's just not better than what's in A and what's in the S for me.
All right,
Fair enough.
we'll put the original in top B then.
Cool.
Now, Ultra Sun. For me, this is still an S. Ian, you want to stick with the S?
Yep.
Kit, would you like to change your... Kit, do you want to go a C or D?
If I can't pick F, I'll go D, because, yeah.
If you want F, I'll accept that vote too. It sounded like you were more looking towards D.
I'll go with D.
All right, Shads?
Still a B. It's still a B. I mean, like I said, they're decent games. I would play what's in S and A. Honestly, I'd play probably like what's in B over Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon.
All
Like,
right.
gun to my head, it's the last Pokemon game I'll ever play.
Damn.
All right, since we've got two S's and a B, I'm going to have to take the executive and put it into a high A. As much as I'd love to put that in S under black and white, I'm not going to completely overwrite Shad's and Kit's opinions on that.
You didn't even ask for mine for the originals. Where I would place them.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip? I didn't mean to skip you. Where would you? Are you fine with where it is, or would you change that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's that high of a B. Because
Yeah, we
I
could
didn't
maybe-
finish it. But I agree, it's like mid.
Well, how about this? Since we
Maybe-
talked about the online systems for X and Y, we'll go doink, and then we'll go doink. How's that look?
Cool.
Yeah.
Alright, so next we got Gen 8, and since both 8 and 9 have DLCs, we will be ranking and talking those separately, much like we did Ultra and Black and White too. And Ian, you
Alright.
got the floor with this one.
So Gen 8. Another first being the first on a home console. So a lot of big expectations going into that one that were not fully met from certain perspectives, but also I feel like they did take measures to make the games fit on this sort of bigger scale on a more meatier piece of hardware. Big thing for this game are the new wild areas that have Pokemon roaming around that you can, no longer entirely random encounters, while still mostly random encounters in the wild areas. You can in fact see some of the Pokemon roaming around, which really adds to the areas. And it, in that regard, kind of adds as little stopgaps between each area, giving you time to sort of take in each bit of the world of Galar. So I feel like they kind of do a good job there. Other than that, it follows the standard formula from the previous generation pretty well. You get to each area, you do what is effectively, in most cases, a mix of the trials and the gyms, and move forward. So it feels like taking a lot of what worked from Gen 7 and adding into the next gen. And of course you get Gigantamax slash, or I'm mixing the two, aren't I? You get Dynamax as the big battle mechanic that
Magic.
time around.
Literally.
They're basically the
Big,
same.
big. And in that regard, it's the first game to adapt the sort of stadium format, or sorry, not the, obviously Pokemon Stadium exists, but like in the main series game, adopt the sort of stadium-esque format that the anime has held for so long, which I thought was kind of cool. You finally get these fights that are kind of representative of what you see in the anime, of, these big stadiums and you're fighting within. So all in all, I feel like it does a lot more to make itself fit within a console. It definitely feels like it gets to being a meatier experience than previous generations, but it also had bugs, glitches, was not the neatest looking game. There are definitely some parts of it at moments it looks quite stellar, but others it's not great to look at. Again, there's always talks of the trees in the first wild area, which some people said look worse than the trees in Ocarina of Time. So, you hopefully would probably not want your game being compared to N64 titles, but my personal opinion wise, I feel like it does a pretty decent job of matching the scope of being the first Pokemon console game. And while it definitely falls short in some areas and does end up feeling standard, I think overall I would personally put it at around a low A. Okay.
Okay. So Generation 8. Honestly, there's some good things and there's some not so great things in my opinion. I think the wild areas is a pretty good step in the right direction to make it more interesting, especially when it comes to like catching Pokemon and feeling like the Pokemon world as is actually feels like a lived in universe with like the Pokemon running around like animals do. I also feel like is very linear in terms of progression. Like, the wild areas are really interesting, as I said, step in the right direction, but then they also fall back on a lot of various things that they've done over and over again, where, like, it's very linear, you still have the do a puzzle or whatever for, like, the gym, fight a couple trainers, and then fight the gym leader. which I was not a particularly huge fan of when I played through this game. This is more of a nitpick as someone who has been trying to complete the Pokédex, which I realize not every player will try to do, but is Sword and Shield is a very annoying game to try to get a complete Pokédex for, because not only do you have to deal with the day-night cycle, you also have to deal with weather conditions, because certain Pokemon only appear during certain weather conditions. So if you are like looking for a very specific Pokemon that only shows up during like a sandstorm, for example, in a very specific location, and you just happen to pull the game up and it's like raining instead, well, your only options are either wait or muck with the system's clock to see if you can maybe get it to pull the correct weather condition. Which is not great in my opinion. I feel like you should not have to manipulate your console clock to be able to complete something in a reasonable period of time. I'm not a big fan of the story in this one either. Like, the rival's not great in my opinion, because he's just like wants to keep battling you because like his older siblings like the champion, so he's trying to be like him too.
He has some serious complex going on.
Yeah.
Therapy for that.
Yeah.
The fact that I could literally figure out the bad guy was the bad guy in the very first cutscene is a problem for me personally, because it should not be that obvious, in my opinion. I think if I had to rank this, I probably would put it at like a high B. Because like there's some good stuff and then there's some not good stuff, so it kind of like evens out in my opinion.
Fair enough.
Okay, just to clarify, we are talking about just base Sword and Shield,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so, to follow up on what Kit said about how I'm not liking the story, I question, there's a story?
Fair
Fair.
The game
Fair.
consists of you going to
Yeah.
a town, something blows up, Leon shows up and tells you to go do your gym battle while he goes and takes care of it before running off in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I do agree that the bad guy is obvious,
Yep.
but
mhm.
as much as that kind of frustrates me, I have to remind myself that, I mean, Sword and Shield came out in what, 2019?
19.
I was 20 years old. The target audience for this game is 10-year-olds. I'm not the target audience.
I mean, we're just
Like-
going to ignore that. I could easily put the meme up about target audiences for Pokemon and Call of Duty, but we're not going there.
So, yeah, it's like, even if that's not, if the vast majority of the people that are playing the games are older, technically the games are made for kids. A kid's not going to pick up on that. The kid will pick up on the absolute lack of story happening. Beatty and Marnie were better rivals than Hop. I wouldn't say Hop is a bad rival. He's certainly not the most annoying. That goes to Barry.
A.K.A. Lonnie.
I do think that what this game really feels, the base game feels to me more like it's a proof of concept. it's proving that Pokemon can work on a home console and is successful. It's got beefier things the with the wild areas, having all those models generate, having the other trainers that you connect to via Wi-Fi show up in your wild areas. The max raid battles are fun. I wish that Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing wasn't limited to just story battles and online battles. Like, as much as I didn't like Z moves, at least I could use those whenever I wanted. I could totally go and use 10,000 volts against Fisherman Gary's Magikarp if I wanted to.
Fuck Fisherman Gary's Magikarp.
I can't exactly do that in this game. Fisherman Gary is just not important enough to D-Max against. And while it's explained lore-wise in the game, it's still frustrating. The Gigantamax Pokemon looks super cool. The G-Max moves look super cool. I can use it against 10 trainers in the whole region. Yeah.
Mm.
It's a great battle simulator, and I do think that the changes that they made to breeding, where you can pass egg moves between people, not people. You can't pass egg moves between people. You can pass them between Pokemon phones.
You can if you try hard enough.
No, I don't think my mom gave me any egg moves.
Technically, it's the dad that passes them down, so... Did your dad give you egg moves, Ian?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, probably not.
Unless I suddenly have Flare Blitz and no one told me.
I mean, you could try.
That went exclusively for the Karens. That's what happens when they get angry. They make themselves look like fools. It's the recoil damage. Would I play Sword and Shield again? Yeah, sure. I wouldn't necessarily put them higher than B. As far as proof of concepts go, it's a very strong proof of concept. But what I want the most in a Pokemon game is memorable story and memorable characters. I got some memorable characters. I didn't get a memorable story. So I'd put this one, the base Sword and Shield, into high C, low B, personally.
Yeah, for me, I fully agree with the story because, like, it has a start, but it has the same problem as Black and White too. Like, once you get past that start, it completely falls off. And this one, it takes even longer to pick up again, where about the time you become the champion, it's like, oh shit, we forgot the story, cram it in there. And hell, some of it's locked behind the post game. So, yeah, that was a serious hit for me, because, like, my feelings towards base Sword and Shield is, like, the exact opposite of Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, where I didn't have the greatest feelings towards it when I started, but I grew to love it. This one, I had pretty good opinions for at the beginning, especially with things like the wild area. It seemed like a good start, and the fact that, like, much like Let's Go, this was one of the first ones to have free roaming Pokemon instead of random encounters. But the more I played it, the more it started falling off for me. And, like, it didn't have to be that way, because this is probably the best looking mainline Pokemon game we have, which we'll get into why later. And, like, I still remember, like, the first time you went through a cave, it's like, oh, hey, they actually made the caves pretty cool in this one. But then you get through that cave, and it just goes back to being kind of samey. Now, I will say they did take the gym battles and make them probably as good as they could. Well, I do like... Another reason I did like 7 is because of those island trials. Yeah, they weren't quite that different. They were different and varied enough to where it made it feel fresh enough to me where I didn't mind doing the whole gym thing. This one, they did mix in a few of the old traditional mazes with trainers in them, like the water gym. But other than that, they were still pretty varied. I think this is probably the best game as far as the gyms themselves go. But that's as good as I'm going to be with praise on its gameplay. I do think this one had one of the better soundtracks. I will also give it that. But again, the pacing of it was just bad. And I also did not like the Dynamax system, because this one to me just felt like the most, like, you only use it to counter other enemies that use it. Like, anyone who's played Mario Tennis Ultra Smash or watched that Scott the Woz video about it knows exactly what I'm talking about. Because when you're only using the counter under Dynamaxes, you're just having a Dynamax fight, and it just doesn't feel special anymore. Now, the Dynamax raids were a bit better, but even still, that was just... The stupid NPCs meant you, like, to tackle the higher ones, you basically had to have friends help. And the wild area wasn't perfect either, because just manipulating it to give it the spawns you needed was a pain in the butt, though it was kind of nice to get some of the harder to evolve Pokemon. Including, I think, some of the trade evolutions you could get. Like, I know you can get Gengar there. But, yeah, just the terrible flow, the lack of story between the beginning and the end, just really hurt the base game for me. And I would probably also put it somewhere in C. Like, I'd say it's better than base 1 and 2, but that's about as far as I'm willing to go.
I went to it. I played Gen 9 first, then. Oh, I finished Gen 9, then went to Sword and Shield, so it was like different, but I remember when I did first start playing it before Gen 9 did come out, I got to the wild area, did not want to leave, and then didn't play the game again because it was forcing me to leave.
Real.
And I like the whole campy theme and being able to play with the Pokemon. That was pretty fun. I didn't like Gigantamax. They're basically the same thing. I didn't like it. All it is Pokemon becoming big. With Mega Evolutions, they had at least different designs that looked cool. With this, they just become giant. Whoopie-doo. And the fact that, like, certain Pokemon had a different form, but it's still just big Pokemon. It's not that interesting. I didn't even Dynamax my Pokemon the majority of the story, either. I think I only did it for, like, maybe the champion, like, the later half of the gyms. But, I mean, at that point, I was over-leveled because I went... I was over-leveled anyway because I was going to the wild area, catching any Pokemon I needed for the Pokedex. I liked the wild area, it was fun. I liked how the different sections had different weather. And then, like, certain trade evolutions were just out in the open, so I didn't have to worry about that. The story was, like... kind of boring. Honestly. The rivals are meh. The game's okay. It's fun. I like the DLC better, but
Which we'll get into.
About that yeah, I like the DLC better. It's more fun. I think it's also cool how there are different, like, gyms depending on the version you get. But, the ghost type gym is my favorite looking one. But that's really about it. I'd say it's around B tier.
Alright, so we've got a couple of B's and a couple of C's, so I'm going to take the executive and put it right about there into C. Also, screw Team Yell, they're even more cringy than Team Skull, and at least Team Skull had a point. Team Yell did not.
Yeah,
that
they were
I would
annoying.
agree with, yeah.
They were annoying.
The only thing good about Team Yell was Marnie.
Yeah.
So...
Rabid wife lovers.
I wouldn't even say I'm a waifu, I just liked her as a character.
No, Team Yell is.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, like... I don't know. The characters in that game were just not the greatest either for the most part, apart from a couple of them. Anyways, the expansion pass. Who was going to take care of the expansion? Again, I honestly forgot.
I think it was me.
I was about to say, I thought it was you, Chigger.
Was it?
I thought it was Shad's.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, who was taking 9?
I thought it was just a random person that isn't
That one's
here.
me.
Alright, so...
I'm
Shads, why don't you take the expansions then?
Okay, so expansions. You have Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra, giving you access to the two eponymous locations. Fun thing about this is that you can actually access them before you finish the story. So if you're in the middle of a story drought and you have picked up the game for the first time, sometime past the release of both DLCs, you don't have to suffer like we did. It takes everything that's good about base Sword and Shield and makes it better. And the stuff that's not great about base Sword and Shield, well, it fixes them to a certain degree. Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra look better. They're smaller areas, so they are one massive wild area. You do not need to leave the wild area to have the story. You have memorable characters, you have an actual story. There's not really an quote unquote evil villain, but you're still solving real problems. First one focuses mainly around battling and Dynamaxing, Gigantamaxing. There's a couple of new Gigantamax forms because once again, Charizard got touched by the favoritism stick and was the only Gen 1 starter to have a Gigantamax form in the base game. Blastoise and Venusaur had to wait till Isle of Armor. You really have to work for the mythical Pokemon / legendary Pokemon surrounding the DLCs. Like Cubfu, for example, I mean, you get it fairly early on, but then you have to really use it and work for it to get it to be an Urshifu. And then in the Crown Tundra, I mean, you run into Calyrex pretty much immediately, but it's gonna take a bit before it joins your party, and you have to do a lot first. It's like all of the good stuff from legendary side quests in previous titles, now wrapped up with a nice little bow. Ultimately, I would not play Sword and Shield without these DLCs. They just make the game a lot more fun. Personally, I would put the DLCs mid to high B.
Yeah, and a lot of people seem to like Isle of Armor as the best. I kind of agree with that, though I don't really agree how Crown Tundra is so divisive, or at least that's the feeling I've been getting from when other people talk about it. It's not as open as. Go ahead.
For what I've heard, for me, for what I've heard, the Crown Tundra was the best one that of the stories.
Huh. I guess we must have heard different things then. But either way, I think they're both good in their own ways. Like, Crown Tundra isn't as open as Isle of Armor, but it does provide more of a challenge, and it does have a bit more story to it. And plus, it also has the Dynamax adventures, like, whether you love it or hate it.
Really fun.
Yeah, I was about to say, whether you love it or hate it, if you hate it, you only have to do it once, and then you're done. If you love it, there's plenty of replayability to it.
Shiny hunting!
There's more new legendaries. And unfortunately, some of them are either not version exclusive, but you're only allowed to take one, so you have to trade for the other for a couple of them, which is unfortunate, but it's Pokemon.
It's stupid.
I do like the fact that for the DLCs that the stories are a bit more personal rather than, kids saving the world shit. Whether or not that works for Scarlet and Violet's another discussion entirely, but for the DLCs I think it's fine. I don't really have that much more to add that Shads didn't already covered. It's just what the base game should have been. I would probably put these in mid to high B as well.
Yeah, I did just recently finish both the DLCs, and I definitely like them better than the base game story in general. I like the little side quests you have to do, though I wish you were able to at least get a chance to catch the other Pokemon you didn't get to choose, like for the two new Reggies that were added for some reason. I wish maybe you catch one for the story, but you could go back and catch the other one and do a similar puzzle to how the other one is, and same with the Calyrex's horses. You get one for the story, and then later you could go back and get the other one. Like, I think that would like just make sense. It'll be easier, especially since not everyone has friends that play the game, and you're not, and for obvious reasons, you're not gonna get that with like the in-game Wonder Trade, or if you have the Homes GTS, it's still not likely you're going to get it unless you have like the version exclusive already. And yeah, this I like how all the areas look. Although with the Eye of Armor, I don't like how you could only get uh one type of the Urshifu's evolution. You either go up the Tower of Darkness or the Tower of Water. And well, I'm happy both aren't needed to complete the Pokedex. I do think it's kind of stupid how you can only choose one, and then you're locked out of the other one entirely. Especially if you get another Cubfu from like Scarlet and Violet, or the other version you don't have of the Gen 8. You're kind of pretty sure you're like locked out of that. So, and if you want the other Urshifu, you're out of luck. Except with trading, but like, eh. So I don't like that part of the DLCs, but otherwise, I say I had lots more fun playing them. And the shiny hunts you could do for some of the legendaries is great. I love wasting my time on them. I mean, I did get a shiny Virizion in like probably 400-ish resets. I didn't keep count, but it took like 2 hours to get. So that was fun. Yeah, I'd rate it like a, like honestly, I think like a high B, honestly, for the DLCs. Yeah.
Fair enough. What do you think, Ian?
So, be honest, I only got this DLC to play the Dynamax Adventures of Shads. So, Dynamax Adventures of Shads S tier. I did not play anything else in the DLC.
No, you got it for another reason too. You got it so you could get Bulbasaur.
That too, yeah. Bulbasaur was in it. Bulbasaur and Dynamax
Got him.
Adventures of Shads S tier. The rest of the DLC, I don't know, man.
We should do a Dynamax adventure one of these days, just all of us.
Yeah, that'd be
Ooh,
fun.
that actually would be kind of fun. I have Zygarde as one of my that we could potentially tackle.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and plus if we've all got the story cleared, we could go after the Ultra Beasts.
About
need
that.
Wait, which story? The DLC or the?
You have to clear the Crown Tundra's story before you can get the Ultras, if I remember correctly.
50% of this VC has not cleared the story for that.
Oof.
Well, I mean, either way, we could still do the basic one. But anyways, are you sticking with S tier? Ian?
Yeah, I guess so, because I don't think it's gonna make that big of a difference on how it gets ranked.
Fair enough.
If I'm the only S tier, it's kind of like I'm just an outlier.
For me, so as I said, I haven't technically finished the story because I have been contemplating shiny hunting one of the Reggies.
Don't do it, it's a mistake.
Yeah.
Do it. It'll be worth your time at some point.
Which one of us is the angel on your shoulder and which one of us is the devil? You don't know.
But anyway, of what I've played, I enjoyed it. There was actually a cohesive story for both parts, and it was more interesting than the base game's story, that's for sure. I like the fact that pretty much the entire area for both is completely open wild areas. Something that hasn't been brought up by anybody yet. is the fact that you can actually have your Pokemon following you in the DLC.
Oh
Yeah. I wish it was added to the base game if you had the DLC.
Yeah, I do too.
It's like the game found out that Venusaur hops like a freaking toad.
Yep.
Adorable.
I mean, if you have like a slow Pokemon in your front, it doesn't work as well, unfortunately.
My poor Pokeboo.
Oh.
It's so slow.
But considering outside of like the Let's Go games, I'm pretty sure this hasn't been a feature for a very long time in the generation games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was only
So
it was only a thing in the remake of Gen
Johto.
2, BDSP, Let's Go, and the expansion pass, and sort of in Scarlet and Violet.
And kinda in our RCS, but we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
'Cause
I also agree with people the fact that like you basically get locked out of different Pokemon based off your choices is not a great idea in my opinion, but I also realized that that is totally put in place because the Pokemon company expects you to trade with people. Does that actually happen? Yeah, no. Especially when it comes to like the legendary Pokemon that you can only pick one of. Like Glastrier and Spectrier. Or the different forms of Urshifu. Or the Regis, for that matter. If I had to rank this, I probably would put it around a high B or a low A.
Alright, well, considering Eileen's feelings toward it, I think we'll go ahead and slap this at the top of B. Let's Go got knocked down a bit further than I thought it would, but oh well, it is what it is.
Yep.
I didn't like them, so yes.
Alright, so Scarlet and Violet, our current generation.
Yes.
First.
Generation 9. The only Pokemon game generation that I have done a Let's Play for on my channel. Insert self-promotion here, I guess.
Link in the description.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah.
I mean, in this case, I probably will put a link in the description for that one.
No, you definitely should.
You should in general. I mean, I have funny moments, so.
And because I did a Let's Play of this, it's the freshest game in my mind, in terms of generation games. The fact that it is a completely open world is great on paper, but the execution is not great. Because while you could theoretically go anywhere you want, you are going to get limited by one of two factors. The main one being the level caps for the areas. Which you would think in an open world, you would expect there to be like level scaling. But there's not in Scarlet and Violet for some reason that I will never understand. So basically, instead of being able to pick what order you want to do things, you basically have to, and this happened to me when I was doing the Let's Play, I literally had to pull up a map that had everything in a specific order. So I just went around the entire region in the order that this map mentioned, because otherwise I would either run to a situation of trying to do a gym that I was way too low level for, or running across a gym that was way too below my level. So that really dampened my experience of the game. There's also the big elephant in the room that is how glitchy the game is. To during the Let's Play itself, we didn't run across too many glitches. There were a few, like getting stuck randomly. There was one time, I don't think this is in any episode, I literally clipped through a mountain and got stuck in it. And it took a while to figure out how to re-clip myself back into the world. So, obviously, for me, that clearly screams this was a rushed game. Not to mention the fact that game experiences incredibly bad frame rate issues.
The train agrees.
Which get... Yeah, I can't do anything about that.
Wrong region. Please go back to Galar.
And like... For, like, me personally, my experience with the frame rate issues was... basically, when I did recording for the Let's Play, we were recording them in batches, and each recording session was something like 5 or 6 hours long at a time. And like the beginning part of the recording would be, for the most part, fine. And then as we were approaching the 6-hour mark, the frame rate would get incredibly bad. And I have also heard people having situations where if they play the game too long, their game literally crashed. I think I also heard stories of people crashing to the point of having their save files corrupted. I think that also happened, but I'm not sure if I'm remembering that correctly.
I'd heard the rumors of it, but I've never known if it was actually confirmed or not.
Yeah, I've not heard of that either.
I really appreciate the fact that the ride Pokemon is just one ride Pokemon that does everything, instead of having to swap between different ride Pokemons for different things. I do appreciate that. It kind of sucks that, like, certain abilities that Koraidon and Miraidon get is locked behind progression. Because, like, I distinctly remember accidentally drowning Koraidon because I didn't realize he couldn't swim yet.
Relatable.
And there's also the fact that, like, climbing, which is really important for, like, traversing through the game, is, like, so late in the game. Which sucks. The terrestrialization, not a big fan of it personally. It's another one of those situations where it just feels like you're wasting the player's time. And or you have to do it to counter the opponent doing it. And what made it worse for me is the fact that I don't know why they set it up like this, but pretty much anytime a trainer uses terrestrialization, they always use it on the last Pokemon on their team. So it's not even a surprise when it happens. The only time I got tripped up with terrestrialization was whenever I ran across like a trainer that either I wasn't expecting it to use it, or it didn't use it like the first or second time they used it, and then like later they started using it. It was like, oh, okay, sure. That's annoying. So I don't particularly like terrestrialization. I will definitely talk more about terrestrialization later when we get to DLC, that's for sure. The story is another situation where, like, there's a story that started and then it just kind of, like, gets put on the back burner for a while, and then they're, like, near the end, they're like, oh yeah, we need to wrap up the story. We should do that. Probably what's another nitpick I have is the fact that, like, during the promotion of the game, they were talking about the 3 different branches of things you could do, which one is basically the Gym Elite Four stuff. The other one is helping a dude with his sick dog. And yes, I definitely cried a few times during that. And then the third time is dealing with bullies. Just because. And, like, that's fine. But then I found out partway through that, no, you do actually have to finish all 3. You can't just do one and still get the end of the game. You have to do all 3, which was not cool in my opinion, considering the way they promoted it as something different than what it actually was. In terms of how I would rank this, I would probably put it around low A for me. It's a pretty good game, but there are definitely some flaws. And I really hope they don't repeat some of the flaws in a future generation. Because they've made some great progress in this game. It's just there's some severe stumbles they definitely did. Anyway, Shads?
Yeah, so base game Sword and Shield is this really interesting dichotomy for me. It's like everything that my inner 9-year-old wanted, and my and the adulty like brain is like, okay. I mean, it looks okay. It's certain biomes certainly look better than others. I mean, the caves look great. Wild area, favorite location in the entire game, arguably within the entire series. But it feels kind of empty, just in general. It's a fully open world Pokemon game, but the Switch just does not have the capability to really populate that open world with enough Pokemon to fully feel immersed. I like the different stories. I like how only one of them is focused on the gyms. The level scaling is definitely an issue. I'm sorry, if people can figure out how to implement level scaling in a fully open, a true open world ROM hack of Pokemon Crystal, you can figure out how to do it on a Switch game.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Terra Raid battles. The multiplayer for this game is super, super fun. I mean, this is probably the game that I've spent the second most time playing with my 2 brothers with. And the only reason why it's not the first is because the 3 of us were absolutely addicted to the Underground back when Diamond and Pearl came. So yeah, I never had issues with the glitches, but I know that they exist. So it's just this really interesting dichotomy for me of I really loved playing it, but it's also arguably the second glitchiest mess in the series after the original games. And that's not good. Personally, though, in terms of replayability, I would put it high B, low A, just because of all the most recent Pokemon games, going back to Generation 6, this is the game that I've found myself playing the most. And the most consistently.
Alright, for me, yeah, you guys make some good points, and a lot of that I do agree with. Um, for me, like a big part of the problem is just the world is so empty. Like it's not just the fact that the population of the Pokemon. It's just like outside of a few cities here and there, so much of it's just the same generic hills or the same cliffside you have to climb up. The world is just a little too big for what it needed, and yeah, the issue of scaling just kind of kills like the openness of it. Like I don't know if the answer was to like have things scale with you, like supposedly the Isle of Armor DLC did, or if the answer is just to clearly mark the order you're supposed to do things. And yeah, having to do all three quests to actually finish the game, I have mixed feelings for, because most of the story after the intro takes place in the two smaller quests, which is Team Star and the Titans. And I had a lot more fun with the Titan and Team Star aspects of the game than I did the gems. Team Star itself is pretty weak sauce. Like, they have the same problem as Team Yell, it's just they're kind of pointless. Like, I will take them over to Team Yell because at least, they contribute a bit to the story. Granted, they're not even really villains, they're just bullies. They're kids that got bullied that decided to fight back and took it a bit too far. Which, yeah, it happens, and I appreciate the fact that they were kind of addressing that, because that is an actual issue in life. But they could have done a bit more with them. Now, I will say one thing. Scarlet and Violet did have a very mixed OST. A lot of the parts are pretty boring and bland ambiances, but then you get to fight Team Star, and anything with them is just like the soundtrack just like kicks it up to 10. And you can't tell me you can't tell me that their boss theme doesn't absolutely slap.
Oh, it does.
Like I actually enjoyed the Team Star segments of the game. The base raids were could have been better, but it was something different. I will agree the Terror raids were better than the Dynamax raids. Especially because the NPCs were better, so you could at least handle anything up to maybe like a 4-star, which is without help from humans. And doing it with the humans was definitely easier and better than in Gen 8. Yeah, there is a lot more you can do online in the Union circles. I would probably... Oh yeah, then there's like the final area, which was kind of... It was a bit antithetical to the rest of the game, but I appreciate it for what it was. There was some weird shit down there, and I love that for it. It's just a shame that it was such a small part of the game and at the very end. Looking at it as it is now, without factoring in other issues, I would probably put it in a solid B, but I also can't ignore the technical side of it. Most of the serious glitches have been patched. Like, I have finished playing this, and that includes the DLC a couple weeks ago, so I did not have issues with falling through the ground like other people did or getting stuck in rocks. Though I have seen a couple Pokemon get stuck in rocks before. Not the biggest deal, but it is a bit immersion breaking. Less thing I can excuse, though, is the performance. The game looks worse than its predecessor. It honestly looks worse than, like, Breath of the Wild, and that was a launch title. And it runs worse as well. That I can't ignore. That does kind of take you out of the experience. And I'm sure part of that is just the fact that it was developed alongside Arceus. And it was also rushed to meet the demand of the anime and the cards. That's more on the Pokemon Company than anything else, probably. I'm sure Game Freak probably at least learned a bit of their lesson this time. At least I'd hope so. But, again, I just can't ignore those aspects, so I'm going to have to drop it down to a low B.
Yeah. This is like my second favorite gen, just because I also had like a lot of fun playing it. Even though I did like absolutely not do it in the order you're supposed to do. I mean, I went to Grusha when I was only like early to mid 30s, and yeah, I got my ass kicked.
And you didn't realize that until I mentioned it. Because I
Yeah.
didn't realize you were playing it out of order until I saw you beat Rhyme. I'm like, wait a minute. Hang on.
Hold on, somebody right.
I didn't even know there was technically a supposed order because I didn't start with the gym challenge. I started with the tie-in. I just ended up going to the gym challenge because it was in the route I was already going to. And so I beat whatever was there, and obviously I did that out of order. And then when Grisha kicked my ass, I took like a 6 month, maybe yearish break from it because it pissed me off so much. Like, what the hell? It's ice type. I have a fire type. What do you mean I'm not winning? So, yeah. And that's what I learned. There was technically a supposed order, so. Yeah, I definitely wish the level scaling could have been better. So that doesn't happen.
Level scaling should have existed, in my opinion.
Or there should
Yeah,
have been a
it
clear
should've.
marker of the order. Like I said, one of the two really needed to happen.
Like, I
Um,
get like wild Pokemon not having that level scaling. Like, that will definitely be like a challenge. Like, I think it would be a good challenge trying to like catch a Pokemon like way higher level than you are.
Mm.
But obviously, probably won't listen to you as much because of its high level. But for gym battles, that definitely should have been like scaled to like how many badges you have currently. Just because I think that technically happens in the anime, depending on where you are. And I think like it just makes sense, like logically. Is that I don't know if that's a good word, but like sense if there was like yeah, if you're like going to Grusha, you're not like getting your ass kicked by having like your starter. I like the Team Star raids much more than the gym fights. Those just because I'm also just tired of the gym fights. Like, jeez. The lack of customization, though, the player customization for clothing is like, what the hell? Why am I stuck in the school uniform when I'm not even at the school the majority of the game?
yeah.
Yeah, that was
You
another
gotta
dig for me.
represent. You
It's like,
gotta represent.
well, that was like, I sorry to interrupt you, but that is a good point. Like, that was another kind of thing I have to ding it for. I don't know what the point of the school setting is. It's like the game really opens it up to be like it's gonna be like some sort of persona like thing going on where you have to balance school and like going out, but like it's as soon as you get into school, it's like all right, go out, get out of here, you're done. Come back into for a lesson if you want to, but other than that, go away. It's like okay then. I don't know what the point of that is. But anyways, continue
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, like, and I mean, I do kind of like how the schools are like called different things depending on the version. I don't get why, to be honest, but like, I guess it shakes things up. And the professor's different, which is cool. And giving Arvin daddy issues and mommy issues is pretty fun. Both his parents are dead. Which dies first depends on the version you pick.
Spoilers.
That was a great plot twist, though.
I mean, we're 2 years into it. I think we can like not worry too much about spoilers.
No, we don't think we have to worry about spoilers the majority of these games.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think like I didn't really get to play with friends till like recently, so I can't really comment on that much. But I didn't like terrestrialize it either. I made all the Pokemon gets is a different type, changing a big ass crystal crown on its head. What the fuck? Especially with how big those crowns are in some of the like tinier Pokemon. It's like, how are you carrying that thing? And it's, I don't think I used terrestrializing either much. Rivals. I did not like Nimona.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
the pneumonia, the stalker.
Oh my. She's like
I
a stalker
would
that is
like
like into you.
I would like to point out, literally one of the episodes is titled Nimona the Stalker for a reason.
Ew.
In the anime?
No, in our Let's Play.
Oh, in Let's Play. Okay.
It
Yeah.
it didn't help that like I gave her this like Valley Girl cheerleader voice.
I could not stand about it. Like, oh my god, girl, I do not want to battle you. Please stop. And also, all of a sudden, popping up at the gyms, you're at to battle you like either before or after. It's just like, honey, please. I know you're bored, but don't take it out on me. Don't like make another new team like you did for the game. You could do that. Or hell, go to a different region.
So where would you put these games?
I say high B, low A, honestly. They are pretty fun. I did not experience many glitches. I mean, I didn't experience at all, other than like Pokemon being like spawned up too high. I did get stuck in a rock much at one point, but like it wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah, and like I said, I'd play these post patches, so the worst, most of the worst I saw were just graphical stuff. But yeah, the Mona and How are the worst rivals, and you cannot change my mind on that. I will take Hop over either of them. Anyways, Ian, let's finish this off.
So I'm gonna try to be concise here, and mostly because I feel like y'all pretty much covers some things. I'm mostly just gonna go on an open world rant here. So from my perspective, at least for me, there's two types of open worlds I really enjoy. One being more a linear base, where your story is set upon these missions, and the world is explorable through side quests. You see this in Legends Arceus, very specifically. Just, you know, if you want to explore the areas, there are side quests to go do that push you in this direction. But the main story goes upon a linear path, and thus you don't run into issues of, since the game is fully open, you know, I'm not accidentally challenging or I guess is it okay to spoil Legends Arceus in a tier list that does not include Legends Arceus?
I mean, I've already been spoiled to most of it, so go ahead.
Okay, yeah, they're like, I'm not gonna accidentally go and fight Volo and Giratina with my fucking level 5 Cyndaquil. Like, that's just not happening. Mind you, you weren't really doing that. Scarlet and Violet wouldn't let you get that far either, but like, you know.
Yeah, that would be the equivalent of
yeah,
walking into Area Zero.
Or you have your Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom style. Just, you know, the game is mostly designed around the idea that you can just go anywhere, and at any time that area will still provide some sort of a challenge. Will still provide a reason to explore. And Scarlet and Violet, very frustratingly, tries to be both of these things, and I feel it really needed to pick a lane. Just, it really either needed to be this new open world Pokemon game based around exploration and filling out your decks, or it needed to have that sort of through line set linear story paths to go through that take you through the world, and then, you know, the side quests that deal things out. And I feel like if they'd taken that approach with Scarlet and Violet, it would have felt a lot better than having, you know, again, as Bricky mentions, just walking up and ending up against a gym that you're totally unprepared for, even though you're otherwise prepared for other events within the area. Like, you can definitely tackle a lot of the Team Star, or what were the bosses called again?
Titans.
Titans.
What was that? Yeah, the Titans. in an order in which the respective gyms in that area were just like way out of your league. And that was just very, very strange. And to be fair, you could kind of cheese the times, especially since half the time there was another Pokemon there that wasn't yours.
Yeah,
So you
always
could.
battling with you.
So it's just like you could cheese those. So they do end up being a bit easier than what they were meant to be. But it's just like there's too many instances in this game where you're not. You actually end up in the wrong place and you're effectively punished for it. And that just feels, again, antithetical to what the game is wanting to promote. You know, if you want to let players explore, and you let players explore. And while level scaling would definitely help a lot there, I don't know if necessarily level scaling in of itself would have fixed it. But of course, we can't know unless it would have happened. So, but yeah, for me, I think pretty much on the same lines as everyone else, about a high B. Otherwise, the game is very good, and as Shad's mentioned, is incredibly replayable. It's very easy to go back to the game, even just to pick it up for like an hour or two.
All right. Now hold that thought about your open world, what you said about open worlds, because I do actually agree
it's
with
highly
that.
relevant.
It's highly relevant because it would also be something I'm going to talk about in regards to the DLC.
Yes.
But as far as the base game goes, I know you guys are mostly saying higher B, but I just cannot get past, the technical aspects. Not so much the glitches, but just how bad it runs. So I'm going to put that right under platinum. Now we get to the DLC, which we've got two parts. The first one is a bit more story focused. The second one is a bit more openness. It still has a story to it, and it continues the story of the first one, but it's probably more focused on the exploration and the new multiplayer mechanics. Now, regarding of what you said about the open worlds a little bit ago, I think applies here because Teal Mask does feel a bit more like it's linear, but does allow for that exploration. And Indigo Disc does feel more like the second one, where it's like fairly open, but it's consistently challenging through it, and does give you reasons to go through the different areas, and keeps it challenging as you do so, as long as you don't over level. Now, my preference is Teal Mask, because I do like the fact that it is way more story driven and feels more like a proper adventure. And honestly, the Teal Mask is like what I wanted from the base game. And while the area is considerably smaller, it's far more focused and did a lot more with what they had. Granted, it does have its annoying bits of mountain climbing, but, it is what it is. The new rivals were far more developed than the pneumonia. And even though I really did not like Kieran, even his arc through the second one, has more thought put into it than just Pneumonia being a stalker. And Carmine, is annoying at first, but she actually, gets to be likable as the DLCs progress. Yeah, there are quite a bit of post-game things to do once you finish both. There's several new legendaries in Teal Mask. Once you've completed the story, some of which are side quests, others you pretty much have to go out and find. And then Indigo Disc, once you complete that one, you can get almost all the legendaries from the previous games. Though granted, doing so requires doing the BBQ system, which, spoiler alert, do that with other people, because doing it yourself is holy shit, is that repetitive and slow. The reason I would put Indigo Disc lower is because of that. A lot of the miles you're going to get out of it is how much you care about catching the starters, and how much and whether or not you have the ability to play with friends. If you can, it can be fun, because you can also do terror raids along the way. The biomes themselves are also a lot more interesting than base Paldea, because again, it's not as empty. It's more, they did a lot more with what they had. And there's a lot less overlap with Pokemon from the previous two regions in the terrarium. And plus, once you complete it, you also gain the ability to fly, which does make traversal a lot easier. But yeah, I would say the DLC is much like how the Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra are what Sword and Shield should have been. I really feel the DLCs are what Scarlet and Violet should have been, and I would probably put them in the bottom of A.
Yeah, DLC is pretty fun too. Although I don't like how to get the rest of the legendaries, you have to do the quest with friends. Which does kind of suck if you're like don't have friends that play the game or can never get a good schedule to play with friends.
Yeah, that's kind of why I made the comment of your mileage may vary with this one.
Yeah, but it is fun. I honestly still don't like Carbide. Whatever.
It actually is Carmine.
Carbide. I don't like her. She is a bit overly mean to her brother, and which I get. Little brothers are annoying. Trust me, I'm aware. But, like some of the things she said and has you do, it's just like, it's too much for me. I don't like it. Kieran was a bit more likable. Although his, like, character arc and the second part of it was like, jeez, dude, calm down. But, the stories is definitely more interesting. I like, the Teal Mask better because it wasn't, freaking gym fights again. Or, like, Elite Four battles. I like the more story-based, and the epilogue afterwards is pretty funny. And, the game is fun to shiny hunt in. I love shiny hunting now. I've got addicted to it.
I'm
Not the
sorry,
only
I
one.
might be partially to blame.
I don't know. I do like the picnic system. I do like making the sandwiches, even though I don't really use that feature much because the typings don't really. I still don't really understand the thing. I just like making sandwiches for my Pokemon. I wish there was like a option where it wouldn't have the effects of the sandwiches wouldn't have effects, or like recipes that didn't have effects were just purely for making a sandwich. But yeah. I did not like the just the Elite Four battles you had to do and then champion for the I'm blanking out the name. Oh, what's this?
The Blueberry Academy.
Yeah, that guy. I did not like the Elite Four is just like, really?
Yeah, that's part of the reason why Teal Mask was the weaker of the two for me. I mean,
Yeah.
Teal Mask, I did it. Indigo Disc is the weaker of the two.
Yeah. I mean, the story you get after beating the, becoming champion for that, academy was definitely more interesting. I like that much better. But I just wish you didn't have to go through the whole, like, Elite Four champion again. It's like, you're an exchange student there. You're not a student. It makes sense why you wouldn't be allowed to be champion. But because they want you to try it, you're forced to do it. And, I struggle with the Dragon type leader and Elite Four member, and I hate him so much because of that. So, fuck him in particular.
So where would you put these?
Maybe like a B-ish, like high B, mid B, something like that. Yeah.
All right, what do you got for us, Ian?
I mean, I think my thoughts pretty well co-align with yours, so I don't have a whole lot additionally to add on top of that, other than uh, Teal Mask is pretty much exactly what I was talking about there. Of give us linear story, give us some room and some general reasons to go explore. I mean, you don't need a whole lot to incentivize people to go explore, but as long as we don't end up putting unintentional barriers to exploration, which Teal Mask absolutely does not. It's a quite a good time, and Indigo Disc quite a lot of fun with friends. But I imagine if you do not have friends to grind out those BBQs, it's really slow.
Yeah, thankfully you don't have to do that much to actually
Thankfully.
finish them, but it's just like getting the extra things like starters and the legendaries is another story.
So I will say I like it because it not only has Bulbasaur, but has Froakie too. Probably low A for me.
Alright, so like the main game, I also did this as part of the Let's Play. I agree with a lot of what has already been said in regards to the Teal Mask. It is definitely what the story should have been in the main game. And how they handled like exploration. Like there's a set path of where you're supposed to go, but if you want to go wander, you could. That is actually a pretty good way to handle it. I just wish it was more done in the main game itself instead of relying on people picking up the DLC to get that experience. Carmine and Kieran, I like Kieran more than I like Carmine. His story arc is not particularly realistic, I realize that, but it's to the point where it kind of gives like anime vibes, which I think is rather humorous, which I think is why I like it as much as I do. Yeah, I also agree with what a lot of people have already said about the Indigo Disc. If you don't have a lot of friends to do things like the BBQs, is probably going to be an absolute slog. I got lucky and I happened to find a group of people that want to do BBQs, so I didn't have too many issues with like getting access to the legendaries that weren't automatically unlocked for me because of version exclusiveness. Something I haven't heard anybody bring up yet is the synchro machine mechanic. I think it's a really fun idea, but I really feel like it does need to be fleshed out a little bit more than it is currently. Because it's cool to be able to walk around and do stuff as your Pokemon, but there are certain things that clearly they either did not care to put in or did not have enough time to put in. Some examples include like the fact you cannot jump while in synchro mode. The fact that if you happen to run across a shiny Pokemon and you are too far away from your character, you can just kiss that shiny Pokemon goodbye. And there's also the fact that like if you get too close to it, you just kill it. Unlike when you're like doing the Let's Go feature where if your Pokemon runs into a shiny, it will not actually kill it. Which is a good feature. I like that. I just don't understand why that's not something that was considered with the Synchro.
Yeah.
So I like it. It needs more development, and I am concerned that we will probably not see this come back as much as I would like it to.
I really feel like the synchro could be better suited in a spin-off than a main game. Maybe that's just me.
I could see that. That's fair.
It also it wasn't locked to the terrarium.
Yeah, that's what I was actually about to say, is I do not like the fact that it's specifically the terrarium you can do it in. I feel like they should have set it up so that once you got it, you could use it anywhere. Like, I don't even think they give a good story explanation for why it only works in a terrarium. It's just, yeah, you can't do it anywhere else. It's like, why? You can fly anywhere, it doesn't matter where you are, but the synchro specifically has to be done in terrarium? Okay. That seems like a strange choice. If I had to rank this, I would actually put it slightly higher than the base game. I would probably put it around an A. Because if I recall correctly, didn't I put it A minus or something for the base game?
You either said high B or low A. I don't remember which.
Right. But that's where I would put it. Shads.
Yeah, so I actually am the weird person in this group that could play the DLC with a bunch of people consistently by virtue of having two brothers. So I actually really didn't run into any of the problems that y'all are mentioning with the Indigo disc.
I mean, I didn't
actually
grind it
like-
out solo that much either, so.
And also, I also like the story with Indigo disc slightly better than the story of the Teal Mask. I just felt like such a jerk during the Teal Mask, and Indigo disc I didn't feel like as much of a jerk. Carmine and Kieran are really good. Even Briar, the teacher. She's a really neat character too.
She looks like a succubus with them eyes.
Yeah.
Just to like pop in here real quick. As a comment to Briar, I genuinely thought she was going to be the bad guy when I first saw her, and when it turned out she wasn't, I was like, okay, never mind.
Yeah, she did kind of give those vibes. Like she might be like a twist villain, but no, she was just a over obsessed teacher with Terapagos.
I think the little scenes that you get after completing Indigo Disc as well is really nice. Because if you because you can go back to that one pool in Kitakami and get a scene with the professor, which leads to the question of whether or not the games are entirely a time paradox or not, but that's for theorists to decide.
That's what paradoxes are, so.
I will say the little wrap up for the DLC where you dealt with not Ogrepon, the Mochi villain, Petarot.
Right.
Gosh, I facepalmed so hard during the entirety of that.
I mean, you should have seen my reaction when I first saw that. I was like, I was just staring at my monitor.
I am sure that the story writers for that they came up with that while they were high.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I was just dying, absolutely dying.
That was so funny. I loved it.
See, for me, it's like, okay, you've got these arguably, I wouldn't necessarily say more mature, but definitely more serious than normal storylines for Pokemon games in Scarlet and Violet as a whole, and specifically in the DLC. And then the wrap up to that is this flying Pachapberry that shoves Mochi into people's faces and makes them do the chicken dance.
Yeah, that really should have been a side story rather than the epilogue to wrap everything up.
Even with that, but that's arguably it's a very minor blip.
It's funny.
I had fun with both of them. I definitely think that they should be higher than the base Sword and Shield by virtue of the fact that they were not buggy messes when they came out.
I mean, at least they got fixed. Play a Sims game. It's still broken as hell.
I have never
She's got
played
a
a Sims
point.
game in my life.
Sims 4 is especially buggy, and the game came out 10 years ago. over 10 years ago, and every new pack breaks it in some way.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the most
Yes.
recent one where we're like, oh man, we want this pack to interact with all these previous other packs. It just ended up being a fucking disaster. It's like, how did this get past QA?
It
How did
didn't.
any of this get past QA?
See, as a programmer, you know that as a programmer, you don't like the QA people. And the QA people don't like the programmers either. But consistently, we've also been placing games that are buggier messes lower than, say, a next version or a DLC. That consistently. So that's my other impetuous. Enjoyability wise, I got the same amount of enjoyment from it. I would put it over the base Scarlet Violet because they were not a buggy mess when they first came out, like Scarlet Violet was.
So where would you put them? Same.
B.
All right.
Somewhere in B.
So we've got a couple of A's and a couple of B's. I think that's enough to warrant maybe the bottom of A.
Okay.
So I can tell this went on longer than I thought it would, and I can tell at least a couple of you are about ready to pass out. So
Well, it's almost midnight for me, so I gotta.
I was gonna ask to have a bit of a discussion afterwards, but before we close out, is there any thing that just absolutely sticks out as being really off or probably not where it should be, provided you have a good reason for it doing so? And that goes for
We're all
everyone.
heavily biased. I think we're all heavily biased towards Gen 5-1.
I was gonna say, most of I know, I definitely skewed it quite a bit, but that's just because I've had some very mixed experience with older Pokemon games, so it's like, I'm an outlier in this situation.
I mean, again, if I was doing my own list, I'd put Ultra Sun and S and drop Heart Gold down to B, and then raise X and Y, and let's go to low A. But that's just me.
I feel like. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, X and Y should be higher because I said so, and I'm the best person.
And I said a good reason.
I feel
Legends
like.
Arceus needs to be on this list.
I feel like Yellow is not so bad as to justify it being the singular game in D. Like, if there are other games in D, I would accept.
I mean, if it was up to me, I would have.
That bad.
If it was up to me, I would have put base Gen 2 in there as well.
I think Yellow. Oh, sorry, Shans.
It's like looking at this, it's honestly exactly kind of what I expected. I figured we'd have a couple of games in the highest tier, a couple of games in the lowest tier of the ones that we ended up filling out. Most of them would cluster around the middle, because when it really gets down to it, if you're looking at it relatively objectively, which is what we were doing, because we all put certain games higher or lower based on things such as, amount of bugs, innovations to the series,
whether or not it's worth playing over third versions or remakes.
Yeah, and when it gets down to it, if you look at any Pokemon game by itself in a vacuum, they are all pretty decent games when you look at them for the time that they were built with that series hardware. None of them are necessarily particularly bad.
Yeah, I would say no Pokemon game is perfect, and frankly, you could say that about any video game. You're gonna find some flaw of some fashion. The perfect game just doesn't exist.
Yeah. And again, I was also being generous to the original version of Gen 1 because it is what started the whole thing. And it deserves credit for that. Otherwise, I would also drop it down to D along with base Gen 2.
Hmm.
Yeah, but Glitching to Mew is so fun.
Let Pikachu be friends with Lugia. That's all I.
Sure.
Okay. Fine. Whatever.
You guys hash out. I really have to go because my bed is.
Alright, well. Yeah. Since we voted for that, I'm going to leave that there. But, thanks everybody for watching. And this is us closing out a Pokemon tier list. We'll hopefully reconvene at a later time after ZA comes out to do the spin-offs. So say bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Later.
Also, this is completely pointless because the best Pokemon game is Pokemon Clover.